Hi there, this is an accumulation of CyberTech Worlds Clash chapters 1 to 10. Hit that subscribe button, and press that bell icon to be notified of uploads, and like and comment. Now on with the story. CyberTech Worlds Clash, a fanfiction by Outlaw Realms. Chapter 1. Seraph. In one of the largest buildings London had ever seen. Well, it was the largest building in London, and one of the tallest buildings on the planet. Harry Avalon was half a mile underground, under the building. He was 23 years old. He was sat on a high-backed leather-padded chair at his desk while he was slumped back, deep in thought. Around him were holographic screens and panels, showing designs of gadgets, engines, and cars, and other amazing things, and screen windows lined the walls, and whether they were actual windows, huge monitors, or even more advanced holograms, only a few people would be able to tell from a distance. Looking through the screen windows, however, that was where your mouth would drop open in the universal what the hell position. This office alone would wow most people, even if they couldn't tell what anything was supposed to be, and this wasn't even half of the amazing stuff hidden away. However, in front of Harry was a huge cinematic screen hovering, and blocking his view to the screen windows ahead of him, and causing him to frown in worry, annoyance and confusion as he watched the Cybernet satellite video feed showing a large village, or small town, in northern England. Harry leaned forward and leant his elbows on his desk. However, what was so confusing about the recording were the odd men wearing long black robes with white masks and their hoods up covering their hair. Though, from Harry's point of view they were all jeering and laughing as they used some kind of, well, he was not sure what, but they looked like little sticks that fired different colored lights, which did something horrid to the people they were attacking. Though, that not being enough, there were some giant-sized, at least 20 to 30 foot tall, things stomping on people as they ran and cried. Seraph. Harry suddenly said as the satellite image froze. In a swish and light storm of wind, she appeared out of nowhere in front of him. She was quite beautiful with long emerald green hair with darker, near black roots down to her butt, curved and wild. She was wearing green leather half boots with black soles and wearing a green top with white patterns and swirling symbols, and sleeves ending at her pulse and over the back of her hands in a point, and a cutout showing her bare shoulders. Her green leather trousers were tight to her legs with a black belt around her waist with a skirt open at the front that hung back down to her heels. It was green from the top, dark, going down it got lighter until it ended white. The belt had a silver buckle front and center with a C&T logo in smoky black mimicking cogs. Seraph's eyes were silver, and she had pale skin and dark shadows around her eyes and green lips and fingernails. She was only 5'5", slender, small-chested, and cute. She looked to be around 20 at the youngest, and she looked semi-amused as Harry rolled his eyes at her. "Seriously, Sarah," Harry said while rolling his eyes again. "Are you ever going to change out of that cosplay getup?" Seraph smirked as she gave him a spin. "Come on, darling," she said happily. "You named me after a mythical wind spirit," she said as she happily hopped up into the air and floated as some wind seemed to curl around her. "Anyway, wasn't Selphie the wind spirit?" She shrugged. "I don't know." "Well, yes. It's confusing," she replied while shrugging. "The books and the archives do conflict on many." Seraph. Harry quickly interrupted as he gestured towards the large screen. "Sorry, darling," she replied with a grin with her upbeat English accent, but she didn't look towards the screen and Harry didn't expect her to. Harry rolled his eyes again, which was probably an unhealthy habit to get into. "So, what's your opinion on what they are?" He pointed towards the screen again anyway. "One can never have too many opinions, and the orbital research teams have already given their opinions on the matter, and you're a supercomputer. Me being a supercomputer, is you doing yourself and me a disservice. I am way beyond that point." Sarah. Okay. Seraph did not even give the screen a glance as she finally replied. "If I say what I think they are you'll think I'm malfunctioning," she said impishly. "As for what my system analysis says, well," she shrugged. "I don't know what they are." Harry sighed and resisted rolling his eyes again. "Just tell me what you think they are. Make a guess." She shrugged. I don't know what I should call them, but the large things are either mythical giants or mecha with holographic skin to look like giants. As for the humans, they are either using some weird new tech, they are mutants, aliens, or they are magic, witches and warlocks, or maybe wizards. There are so many names for magical humans through the mythological archives. I'm not sure what they would be called if they truly existed. Harry sighed while shaking his head. What about the police reports? Apparently, witnesses and survivors say a hurricane destroyed the town and killed the people, she replied with a little disgust at that. Harry growled a little, angry as he fast-forwarded with a small holographic panel hovering above his right armrest. The men with masks and black robes had left, and more came and did something with those who saw what happened. Though these ones were different in that they wore different types of clothes, and did not hide their faces, but Harry doubted they could be trusted. If this truly is magic, then they used it to modify those people's memories. Harry growled furiously. But why would they do that and not just kill them too? Asked Seraph eagerly, since her creator was not calling her crazy. Plus, he would have to call the CyberTech guys nuts too, though she would secretly admit that a lot of scientists working with CyberTech were a little off-kilter. Because the killers are obviously terrorists, he replied. These ones, he gestured the screen. They could be covering it up from us to keep themselves hidden and secret, safe from us retaliating against them all. So, you're planning on releasing this to the public, right? So they can defend themselves? Seraph asked hopefully before he did something stupid as she moved closer, floating sideways. The wind effect had disappeared, as she leant on the arms of Harry's chair staring into his deep green eyes in worry. Is it possible to detect them? He asked, ignoring her question as he poked her on the forehead and pushed her back where she finally let herself land back onto her feet. Yes, she agreed skeptically. I'm getting faint readings all over the planet. One is not too far from here, but with some system tweaking we should get much better readings. Harry nodded his head slowly as he thought things through. It still doesn't make sense. Magic would defy logic. Wouldn't it? He said, talking to himself more than Seraph. I don't know, she shrugged. But doesn't cybertronic technology? She asked amusedly. Harry just glared at her while rolling his eyes, as he couldn't quite help himself. You're supposed to be smarter than that, Seraph. Cybertronic tech does not defy logic. In fact, now I think about it, magic might not either. I guess this shall be a new project. If we could. He trailed off and looked back up at Seraph. Seraph pouted, though looked smug. So, what do you plan to? She trailed off. Harry, there's a large source of activity. She gestured the screen as it switched from the recordings to live satellite feeds of those same assholes attacking innocent people, though this time without giants. Harry growled as he ran his hands through his mess of raven black hair as he quickly stood while gritting his teeth. He was about 6'1" and wore a black satin suit that he brushed down as it crumpled while he was slouching about at his desk. He started by removing his jacket and dropping it to his chair. Then Harry worked on the buttons to his waistcoat. Harry, Seraph complained with a roll of her eyes. I don't think we have time to have sex, even if I used a holographic submind to deal with the fun part while I try to. Sarah. Harry groaned as he started moving toward the elevator as his waistcoat, shirt and tie landed on the floor. Seriously. It was one time, and you wouldn't shut up until I let you experience losing your innocence, as you put it. It wouldn't have been as amazing with anyone else, Seraph complained while pouting rather adorably. You gave me the ability to experience these things, and to have desires, so you needed to take responsibility, and continue the experiment. Anyway, Harry continued while holding in an exasperated sigh, and his neck spiral. That isn't why I'm undressing, he said with a small chuckle as the lift opened and he slid in with the door closing after him, and then the lift moved, drawing down, and back, as the building was big enough that it needed elevators that traveled horizontal and vertical. I'm going to engage the night program, he said as he kicked off his shoes, socks and trousers. It hasn't even been tested yet, Seraph complained as she blinked into existence in the lift. Well, it's going to be tested now, Harry replied as the lift doors opened and he stepped out as he shimmied off his boxer shorts with Seraph following him, and wishing he did just want to have some fun with her. They walked out into a huge garage-like chamber with all sorts of large gadgets and vehicles such as a beautiful silver motorcycle, even a huge battle helicopter in military green. However, ignoring them, Harry moved to a closet in a side chamber, and pulled out a rubbery leather body-tight bodysuit with circular holes throughout, and squeezed into it. The black suit covered him from ankles to neck, and sealed tight to his form once he pressed a switch on the left sleeve. Are you sure you want to do this? Asked Seraph worriedly. Harry just looked at her and smirked. I never had a hero to save me, but I can be the hero that saves these people. Seraph just nodded sadly in understanding, as Harry approached metallic armor as the wall folded it out. The armor was a dark smoked matte silver and red. It was formed and curved and looked like it should be in a futuristic space sci-fi TV show, film, or video game. It had a gauntlet floating in a null field of transparent energy in front of the armor. Harry smirked as he clasped the gauntlet along his left forearm. With a gasp of pain, Harry grimaced and sighed as he looked over the rest of the armor, and internally groaned and hoped all the systems were up to the task ahead, because just getting dressed was going to sting something messed up. CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 2. The Cybertronic Night. Screams of fear, panic, and pain ran rampant throughout the small town as many people were murdered and tortured. Men wearing black robes and white skeletal masks laughed manically with joy as they attacked their prey. Voldemort was a tall man with long bony fingers and snake-like face with slits for nostrils and blood-red eyes. He watched on in amusement. The Muggles would not stand a chance. It was a pity they could not fight back, and it was a little boring, but still held his interest. He wondered how long it would take the Order or Ministry to find out and arrive. Not that it mattered, and the idiots never arrived on time anyway. He sometimes wondered why the Order of the Phoenix bothered to even try, as they were useless, and sometimes he got the impression they didn't really care much about the Muggles. However, from the way they didn't fight as hard as they could, it was a wonder the fools weren't all dead yet. If they had any sense of self-preservation at all, they would tell the crazy old fool leader of theirs to fuck off, and go it alone. They would be safer that way. Voldemort wasn't stupid or blind like those who foolishly followed the old light wizard around so lovingly. He knew that the old fool was a deranged wacko, even more so than he, and forced morons to do things they wouldn't have done under normal circumstances or for anyone else. People tended to have better self-preservation instincts than that, but they had so much faith. Though, even Voldemort could see that waning. However, for now at least, when the great Albus Dumbledore said jump, they tended to ask, how high? The Dark Lord Voldemort had to wonder at some of the things the old man came out with, such as fiercely hiding the girl even though she was no threat, and quite honestly, he couldn't be bothered to kidnap her. He even knew for a fact that the old man didn't allow anyone to teach her anything useful, so if the prophecy was correct about her, then who cared when her power was being neglected because of the fool? However, Voldemort's Death Nibbler spies in Hogwarts, since the girl was being forced to stay there during the school year, said she was quite good at practical magic, but that wasn't what brought a bemused smile to his lips. It was the fact that it was becoming blatantly obvious that the girl was becoming more and more rebellious, and had started questioning the old man's motives. Even with her obedient parents, it seemed she was very headstrong. Maybe Voldemort should somehow get her the message about her missing sibling to stir things up? She had been caught by the old man, most likely spying on her, learning spells of a, to the light, questionable nature, though to Voldemort they were positively mundane. The old man had then forbidden her from learning anything without his permission, which caused a huge fight where she told him what she thought and none of it was good, which got her grounded. The old man didn't have a clue. It was only a matter of time before she snapped and ran away. Though everyone could get lucky and she could snap and kill the old bastard, it would certainly do him, and the world, a favor. Voldemort might even let her, and her closest friends, leave the country as payment, as he did of some honor, and could respect the girl for killing the fool. Voldemort had killed quite a few purists for their lack of honor and abusing their own blood. He didn't want divs like that in his forces. Voldemort was suddenly brought out of his musing by a revving engine of some kind. Frowning, he looked around though saw nothing. His frown deepened as he looked up, almost gasping in surprise, and he had only thought that the old man starting to kill off his Death Eaters would surprise him. He saw some kind of silver motorcycle, though its wheels looked split to the sides and spinning fast. He could not see the rider clearly, but it was a little worrying. Voldemort was worried slightly for only one fact. He could not sense any magic at work, which meant this thing did not use magic, which meant it was Muggle. Though, he loathed to admit it, but even Voldemort knew that the Muggles weren't weak, and he knew that if they ever realized what was going on, that they would start firing, and not even the old man could persuade them to see reason, and to work for the greater good. In other words, they could have their hands full, and the Muggles wouldn't be pushovers. Voldemort didn't like to count out possibilities like the old man. He liked to put things in perspective. He knew neither the old man, Order of the Phoenix, nor the Ministry believed that the Muggles could really become a threat. It didn't mean was afraid of the Muggles, but it did mean he would be cautious, and keep attacks to the minimum for now, just enough to appease his more ruthless and stupid racist Death Eaters without giving too much away that the Muggles may start growing suspicious. If Voldemort had his way, he wouldn't bother with the Muggles at all, as in the greater scheme of things it served him and his forces no purpose. However, he had to lead these fools to accomplish his eventual control of the Ministry, and to do that he had to give a little to gain a lot. The old man and the likes may think he just controlled them through fear, but nothing was that simple. After all, he was just one man, though he loathed to admit it. Even he had his limits. The wheels on the bike folded in as it neared the ground and sealed seamlessly before crashing down and skidding to a stop. The bike looked quite a bit larger than Voldemort had seen before, at least 0.5 times larger. As the rider stepped off, Voldemort's eyes widened in wonder and apprehension. A man wearing metallic matte armor soon stood before him. Across his stomach 7 dark red plates slanted in each direction like a V over his abs, and on his right arm a dark red curved blade poking out of the thick metallic red sleeve around his arm with the tip just above his armored glove. His left arm had some kind of small dark red shield on his forearm on a hinge at his elbow leading up just past his shoulder, though it contained black marking in the shape of elongated ovals. His armor was mostly dark silver-gray except around the top of his abs, shield, right arm, and boots, which were a matte crimson. His helmet was almost dragon-like with sectioned armor around his neck for free movement. There was no visor in the traditional sense but a curved section of black metal, and around the matte black color of the eye shield, it contained a crimson demon-like image going round and up the sides over the flat metal horns on the side. Around the armor's waist was a thick crimson belt with twin flat-barreled guns pointing down to his shins. The skirt also had some markings going down their length in black with an ominous glow. Voldemort started and took one cautious step back as he noticed everything had gone exceptionally quiet and took a quick glance around. The weird armored man, Voldemort could certainly tell he was male by the flat chest plates, had garnished everyone's attention. Even the Muggles had stopped trying to escape. Then a collective gasp escaped everyone's lips as the bike changed its speed, clicking and re-shifting on metal with zoom and swish-like noises as it rose onto strong and powerful matte silver legs with a similar look to the armored man in color, though its visor had no shape to it and it, like the armor, had no discernible way of seeing. To the victims watching, it was like something out of a science fiction movie coming to meet something out of a fantasy movie. The mecha's head moved from side to side, scanning the crowd, at about 9 feet tall. Its crimson-red eyebrows narrowed as its eyes rested on the deformed human. It created some kind of whirling noise like its voice was another language entirely out of human understanding. On the armored man's back, flat and long to his body and crimson, was what looked like 2 engines of some kind with black markings along them, but they seemed inactive at that moment. Who are you?" the snake-faced freak demanded, suddenly gaining control of himself. "The question really is," began the armored man with a metallic-sounding distorted voice. "Who are you, and how fast can you die? But I suppose I'll be the polite one and answer. I am the Cyber Knight. I am Justice." The snake-faced man sneered as if disinterested, but he was a little curious. "And I am Lord Voldemort, and I shall teach you Muggles all how superior we wizards truly are." "Oh, and how can you do that when soon you'll be a smear beneath my boots, Magic Man?" asked the Cyber Knight coldly. "We'll see about that," Voldemort laughed darkly. He turned to his minions. "You lot carry on and I'll take care of this Muggle," he ordered before turning back. His minions laughed. One minion was about to kill 2 little children that held each other on the floor fearfully. However, the engines on the robot's back moved and activated with a red light energy, and its right arm moved up with some kind of black box popping up with 2 round barrels. And in a crackling sound 2 red bolts of energy shot out, slamming into the robed human's chest, sending him flying back with steam rising from the bloody wound as he dropped dead. The machine moved with speed past Voldemort, near flying past using the engines for more speed. Its powerful feet were crunching the ground with its strength and weight. It clamped down its 2 strong hands around 2 more minions' heads, crushing their skulls before letting them drop, dead to the ground. The machine then turned from the gawking minions it had not yet disposed of and looked at the scared children, and pointed for them to hide. They didn't need telling twice. Nodding, they ran as the robot turned back to its prey. Suddenly the scared minions started bombarding the machine with all manners of forceful spells. It had to dig its powerful feet into the ground as it slid back a little. However, Its armor took every hit with ease, but it was the odd blue glow coming from what were black markings on its chest that was worrisome, because of the odd energy shield that lit up transparent blue when spells hit. As some of the spells hit the shield, they just veered off course, harmlessly hitting walls, grass or cars, but the machine stayed standing, impervious. To the wizards it was a terrifying sight to see a Muggle weapon so capable of taking their spells, and to the Cyber Knight he made a mental note to get Wonderland to look into improving on his distortion field technology, as it seemed quite powerful as a defense against magic. Suddenly the machine shot up into the sky, and over the spells, crushing down on one minion, killing him instantly, and grabbed another's throat, ripping his head clean off, then blasted a third. All the while, the minions screamed in panic, firing uselessly on the mechanical enemy, wishing they stayed at home this night, some even trying to run away while the Muggle weapon mercilessly picked them off. Voldemort looked back from the metal thing slaughtering his Death Eaters to the armored man, a look of horror on his face. "You'll pay for this," he screeched, raising his wand. "Avada Kedavra," he roared, enraged as a green beam blasted out of his wand. The Cyber Knight just moved his left forearm in the way, and the black markings flashed into a glowing aqua blue, and the elongated sections popped out, the edges glowing that blue. The curse hit a blue field and veered off, smacking into the ground by his feet, but he had to admit silently that that curse had to be very powerful, as it made his arm a little numb. However, the look on Voldemort's face was priceless as his eyes widened in utter horror. "No, no. Impossible," he muttered to himself, but with his tech the Cyber Knight could hear him clearly. The killing curse is supposed to be unstoppable. Only that bitch has ever stopped it, and that was with magic. "No, you. Huh? What's the matter, Magic Man?" the knight asked coolly. "Your unstoppable curse doesn't seem quite so unstoppable anymore. Maybe I should just slice and dice." "Justice," the Cyber Knight yelled the last word as he punched his right fist forward, and a serpent-like blade shot out on silver and red-sectioned metal, with black markings that started glowing blue, which Voldemort could guess meant more trouble. His eyes widened in shock and fear, as he had never before been so defeated, and it seemed stupid to test the waters right now, as he did not have any upper hand here. Voldemort could only glare as the serpent blade shot towards him before disappearing with a soft pop. The blade smashed into the ground where Voldemort once stood, creating a shockwave of force and a small crater, before the knight gave a soft tug and it retracted back into the armor. The Cyber Knight gave a growl of annoyance as he looked over to see his mecha stopped its fighting when the remaining minions disappeared, running for their lives. Harry realized he would have to see whether he could recalibrate the distortion field to hopefully be able to prevent the cowards from teleporting away next time. "Siren," he called to the mech. "Let's go." The mecha nodded as she looked to him, walking over at a leisurely pace as her eyes continued scanning for any more potential threats. The people were staring in awe, with looks of gratitude. He would have to hope that this business with these magical fools did not get out of hand. Nobody needed or wanted another war, and he would rather his company take care of it without the normal people, super religious nutters, or idiots, going off on some crap about ungodliness and whatever else they came up with. He wasn't surprised as his sensors suddenly detected something. 24 people just appeared out of nowhere, so he turned around with narrowed eyes. Sure, he would let them modify these people's memories. Heck, he was certain most would prefer not to remember, but it didn't mean he liked the idea. They were certainly mage, as they all carried the small thin sticks, wands. Their sticks were pointing at Harry and Siren, so he kept his shield active as most of them looked shaky and about to fire at any moment. Harry scanned through the crowd and looked into their eyes. A lot of them had a defeated look in their eyes, while some he noticed staring in admiration at some white-haired bearded stereotypical wizard, who looked unfazed and as if he had everything under control. In other words, delusional, wearing purple robes with gold and silver stars and moons. However, what Harry liked was seeing the few with defiance in their eyes, not those that seemed to worship the Merlin wannabe. Though they all had wands trained on Harry, as their eyes took in the sight of death that he brought behind him. Maybe Harry should have captured them all? Though, he had no place to imprison them, and he sure as hell would rather kill them than give them to these losers just for them to escape justice for some bullshit reason, and then end up back on the streets to re-offend. After all, from his point of view they were terrorists. It was certainly a mess, and Harry could tell the innocent civilians behind him were scared, and already hiding, but seemed unable to stop watching even as they hid. Siren moved cautiously up beside Harry, and some of the mage nervously fidgeted, and took small steps back as the machine looked the mage over with no expression, as she didn't have a face like a normal organic creature did. Harry wondered mildly what these people might try, as it was a certainty that they didn't want him knowing about this silly infighting these people had going on, but they could do nothing. If they tried to stop him, they would become his enemy, also because as far as he was concerned, he would do everything in his power to protect innocent people from this menace to society. It took a few more moments before the old man took one step forward. He didn't look very pleased, and in fact looked quite pissed at the Cyber Knight. Though, he had this awful twinkle to his bright blue eyes that made Harry want to smack him. However, after a moment, the Cyber Knight's sensors picked up something surprising. It was a very mild psychic wave, almost unnoticeable, but it was certainly there, and coming from the old man. Though, it was useless, as Harry's armor had inbuilt defenses against psychic attack on the mind, as it was originally designed to fight against supervillains. After all, with all the mutants and metahumans, not that he had anything against them, but there were quite a few that did turn to crime, and therefore the need for weapons to stop them arose, as superheroes weren't nearly as common. Though, Harry made sure to keep out of S.H.I.E.L.'s way, as Stark had enough trouble with them douches trying to and, in some cases, stealing his technology. "That won't work on me, old man." Harry spoke in annoyance, as this old man seemed not much better than the terrorists. The old man stopped trying with a look of surprise before his anger returned. "You should learn some manners and restraint, old man. It isn't very nice or polite to attempt to look inside someone's mind without their permission. He's Albus Dumbledore, he doesn't have to listen to you." Some man with messy black hair and hazel eyes interrupted. "You're just a murdering muggle." "I am the Cyber Knight, Justice," was his fierce reply. "And these are my people, and I shall defend them how I want to. You may enjoy allowing the dirty old man to watch you screwing whoever, but I and others do not." "Shut up, you filthy murderer," yelled out a ginger-haired young man whose face seemed to yell "smack me," and the knight was tempted to, though while wearing his armor he would certainly put him in a coma at the very least. "He's the great Albus Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of our age," he finished proudly. The knight, however, just laughed, his modulated voice sounding creepier than Voldemort. "Yeah, well, I bet mages from other countries might disagree with you, not that I care," he replied nonchalant, and enjoyed how angry it made the ginger guy. If he could provoke. No, maybe he should just let it slide? Though he did have this strange feeling he would end up fighting these fools eventually. Though, it may be best to give them a chance, but if they squander it, he'll take them down. They could only hope he would have the means to keep them imprisoned by then. The ginger went to seemingly attack, and the Cyber Knight moved to defend, when the old man put his hand up, stopping the ginger, and finally spoke. "My name is Albus Dumbledore, leader of the Order of the Phoenix," he said calmly, calmer than Harry would have expected. "You will desist in interfering in what does not concern you. You're lucky, as we shall let you go this once, but we will not let you bite me," the knight interrupted angrily. "You fools couldn't deal with them while I tore them apart. These are my people, so that makes it my business, and I shall do all in my power to protect my people. You should think yourselves lucky that I'm not S.H.I.E.L.D., or you wouldn't get a warning to stay out of my way. I would have just attacked." "Wait," Dumbledore cried out, but startled as Siren transformed back into her bike mode before regaining his bravo. "Was that a threat?" he demanded angrily. "Nope, that was a promise," he replied nonchalant as he climbed on his bike and the engine swished on. "I don't care about you one way or the other, to be honest, but I will put a stop to this. I will not put up with you fucks coming along all high and mighty saying that it's okay for your fucking kind to terrorize and murder my people, but not okay for me to use deadly force in retaliation. I will put a stop to this mindlessness whether you like it or not." And with those parting words, the Cyber Knight revved his engine, getting a soft humming whirling sound before spinning round with the back wheel spinning, before shooting forward leaving a red trail of light, before the bike transformed again, and shot into the air. CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 3. United. Harry sighed as he flopped naked, except the gauntlet on his left forearm, into his leather chair in his lab office with a tired sigh later that evening, at just after 5. He had only just returned from kicking the crap out of Voldemort and giving that fucked up Order of the Phoenix his warning, but something about the black-haired, hazel-eyed wizard bothered him. It didn't help that the red-haired woman next to him looked familiar. Seraph suddenly entered the lab from the elevator carrying a neatly folded pile of clothes, and placing them on the table next to Harry for him to wear. He didn't really think about much except the two people as Seraph continued to check every electronic archive on the planet for details on either of the two majors. Harry slowly dressed himself in thought, wondering where the heck he had seen them before. It seemed like a very old long-lost memory, which made him rethink about the memory and dream reader Wonderland put on hold because it was proving tricky, and dangerous because that would be useful right then. They were soon to start some collaboration on the tech with Stark Industries, as Stark was the foremost expert when it came to the mind and technology, as that was how he controlled his armor, whereas Harry's was built to be an extension of his body, and had a built-in AI that worked with the wearer in a symbiotic relationship rather than a collaborative one. Though Harry wasn't sure what worked better when it came to armor, he was sure that with his cybertronic and cybermorphic armor his way was best. It just wouldn't work well otherwise. Though, he supposed if he combined Stark's mental controllers and his symbiotic controllers it could boost efficiency of either Knight or Iron Man armor models. Before he knew it, Harry had dressed in a neat pair of dark blue trousers and shiny black shoes with a white shirt and blue tie with blue jacket. Damn, for such stuffy business attire it always surprises me with how comfortable they are, he commented to himself, but caught Seraph rolling her eyes as she neatened his tie and was doing up his jacket neatly for him. "So, have you got anything on these two yet?" Seraph frowned and looked worried, but taking an unnecessary deep breath spoke anyway. "I couldn't find much on the man, and since the woman turned 11 her existence thins out. However, he is James Potter and she is Lily Potter, formerly Evans." Harry just stood staring at the final pictures up on the hollow screen for a few moments, looking to only be seconds away from losing his temper. He started taking deep breath after deep breath until he calmed down a little. "As in?" He trailed off, unable to ask as his anger at the thought flared up. "Yes, darling," she agreed and paused for only a moment before continuing. "They are the birth parents of Harry dash, 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 dash of Harry Avalon." "Why the fuck are they alive?" he hissed and demanded angrily. "Though those fucks should be dead." Harry growled as he grabbed at his company's latest smartphone from the side and didn't have to look to know it was suddenly auto-syncing with everything he needed, as he didn't know where his last one got to, but knew it had likely been unsynced and completely erased. He was pretty sure Seraph knew where his last phone was, but he didn't ask. He might have to go and fetch it if he asked questions like that, and it could be anywhere in the building. Harry placed his phone in his pocket as he walked towards the elevator out. Grabbing his long black coat, he put it on as he entered the elevator, quickly followed by Seraph, as the door closed behind him, and the lift ascended. "Are you going to tell me where you are going?" Seraph asked expectantly. Harry sighed as he allowed himself to calm a little. "I'm going to confront them," he replied nonchalant. "Then I'm going to," he groaned as he deflated more. "I don't know. All I want is some answers. If those people really are my parents, I want to know why they dumped me with those things." "You do realize what it could mean if they are, don't you?" she asked. He just looked at her a little confused. She rolled her eyes. "You could have magic too," she giggled as his eyes widened in realization. He may be a brilliant scientist, but sometimes he really didn't think things through. Harry shrugged as the elevator reached ground level and opened into the lobby. The pair continued out, walking towards the main doors, Harry's coat swishing out behind him. "Well, anyway, that doesn't concern me. I hope my limo will be waiting," he added, staring at her. Seraph giggled and nodded. "Of course, it will. I'm too brilliant to forget to call it for you." Harry chuckled with a tired sigh. "Well, send the location of the nearest magical nest to my driver and keep tracking me no matter where I go." "Already done, and on it right away. The SAT techs are already recalibrating the systems and boosting the power output to follow you more closely." She grinned as he gave her a quick kiss on the lips and quickly sped out of the front doors, leaving her within the hard light holographic emitters of the building. "That's so unfair," whined a cute young female security guard by the doors. Seraph looked at her curiously. "Even the computer can get laid by a cute guy," she joked as she looked shyly at the cosplaying holographic representation of the Seraph network. Seraph giggled and kissed her on the lips, startling her before pulling back and sticking her tongue out, winking and disappearing in a shimmer of light. "Arg, Seraph," she whined, pouting. "You could have at least slipped me some tongue," she mumbled the last, half-jokingly. "Maybe next time, sweetie," giggled Seraph's voice seemingly all around her. The security girl blushed deeply, making a mental note not to express her thoughts aloud at work anymore since Seraph would hear her and mock her. Harry slipped into the back of his stretched black limo, and the driver immediately started pulling out into the road and following the CyberTech satnav. The driver learned when Harry hired him not to bother opening the doors for him since he was always rushing around and did not like waiting for the formality. Harry sat back as he found an earpiece in the charging dock in the car door, and placed a black Bluetooth earpiece in his right ear and switched it on as it auto-synced to his new phone, as he knew Seraph would do all of that behind the scenes so he didn't have to think about it. "Seraph, what can you actually find out about these people?" he asked as he shut himself off from his driver with a gesture of his right hand. It didn't work, so he sighed and pressed the button instead. "Nothing substantial through the internet," she replied over his earpiece while sounding amused. "However, there are plenty of rumors about witches and wizards circulating, though I can't be certain what are correct, and which are not." "What about the Avengers database?" "I'm certain they may have run across a major or two these past few years dealing with Hydra and all those other Muppets." Seraph laughed. "You want me to hack Stark's system, are you crazy?" she asked. "You know it won't look good for you if I'm caught hacking them, and they may get nosy, which could get S.H.I.E.L.D. involved, and then as they say the shit will hit the fan. Though I'm still not sure why they say that other than the obvious waste matter getting splattered all over. Plus, hacking them just because Starks tried that with my systems is not justification. I did set up that delightful Trojan to glitch out their systems, but jerks found it too quick." Okay, Harry was quick to interrupt. I get it, we don't need the bother, and I quite frankly don't want to end up working with them on this as they won't approve of my methods. Though, I would rather not kill, they are the enemy, for now I shall until we can secure them, and then, damn, I guess we'll have to build a facility to hold them. Yeah, she agreed as she paused a moment. Well, they have tried to build a facility within the UK-a new super prison. They have run out of money as they went over budget because of incompetent management. We were supplying them security systems. We could take over the project and privatize it and add in methods for keeping Mage captive. Harry nodded with a thoughtful smirk. That sounds like something I would do. How long until we can have it up and running? A few months, she replied to his shock. They couldn't afford our security systems, she answered his unasked question. The place could keep some powered beings captive, but not the rest. It doesn't even have cameras. They had been thinking of trying to get cheaper systems from shady sources. Okay, we can run a super prison, Harry said thoughtfully. Make it so, and speak with Cornelia about the distortion fields getting some new upgrades based on our findings. Already doing that, and... Seraph sounded exasperated. She's pretty excited about this whole magic people business. Yeah, I'm glad I went out, he replied sheepishly. Seraph just laughed as the limo finally pulled over to the side of the road and he slipped out, closing the door, before opening the passenger side. Mac, you can leave, I'll call if I need a ride back, okay? Yes sir, the guy agreed as Harry closed the door and he pulled back out into busy traffic. So, where do I go from here? Harry asked while looking around, but all he saw was a pub in between a video game store and a sandwich shop. Straight ahead of you, Seraph replied over the Bluetooth. It's the central building. According to every internet map service through the net, the central building does not exist, but the satellites can see it. It's some kind of grimy-looking pub with a sign saying it's called the Leaky Cauldron. If I ever needed sustenance, I would choose the sandwich shop next door. Good call, he agreed, amused. Heck, they probably don't take real money anyway, so I luck out there, he said as he quickly pushed the door open and entered, startling as he heard the Bluetooth start crackling for a moment. Sorry about that, Seraph said suddenly. That building and a few miles behind it are under some kind of field that I figure is supposed to hide them. However, it also seems that it was interfering with the signal momentarily. However, I adjusted the frequency to match the barriers and upped the signal strength. CyberTech say the harmonizing of frequencies is apparently fascinating and want to scan as much of it as they can now tune a satellite to scan for those fields. Okay. As long as it's not dangerous and they won't lose track of me, then go right ahead, Harry replied. Wow, you're just exciting all of the nerds today, darling, she replied while holding in a snicker. Harry rolled his eyes and ignored that comment. Just keep scanning, use my phone as well now I am in the barrier to get a better judge of it from the inside, he said as he finally looked around to see a bunch of people wearing robes sitting around drinking or eating at grimy and dark-looking tables. Damn, if I tried to open a bar like this it would never have a customer. These people are morons. I totally agree, Seraph commented. However, I've finished a scan, and although I can't tell how many layers, I'm certain there is more than one barrier, possibly multiple for different uses. It stands to reason that they would want to protect themselves from other wizards. Agreed, he replied as he approached the bar, getting a very strange look from the old filthy-looking man behind the bar. Dan, didn't these fools know how to wash, well, anything? What can I get ya? The dirty old man asked, as if expecting Harry to want a drink in such a shithole of a pub. Harry made a mental note for some time in the future to buy this place and clean it up. He was sure nobody in their right mind would want to walk into this magical place from the street to see the inside was less clean than the path outside. Information, Harry finally replied. The old barman's eyebrows rose in mild interest. I'm looking for a Lillian James Potter. The girl who Livid's parents? He asked in shock, eyes widening. Heck, I don't even think you know who's bothering to find them anymore. Girl who lived? Harry replied curiously. Who's the girl who lived? He asked, though he knew in part, but it made him angry, and knew he would have to protect her from these morons. The man snorted. You know, Amanda Potter, the girl who survived the killing curse while she was just a baby and destroyed you-know-who. Harry frowned, so that's what Snakeface meant by someone using magic to survive the killing curse. Harry groaned while rolling his eyes when he thought of the you-know-who bit and replied. No, I don't know who? He asked. The barman looked beyond surprised. Well, the Dark Lord, surely you've heard of him? Oh, Harry replied as he realized who he meant. You mean that Voldemort? The barman flinched, but Harry just continued. Wanker. Well, I only have business with Lillian James, not their daughter. Though that was the truth when he came here, now it was not, as he wanted to see whether they had a chance at a relationship. What kind of business? Interrupted a balding red-haired man who wore a grey robe suit, leaving his seat further down the bar and carrying some kind of juice in his glass. He was there, with that old fart, Seraph commented as an image appeared in his right eye for a few moments as she sent a picture to the contact there. He's your chance to get to them the easy way, which is lying your ass off if you have to. He looks pretty gullible and way too trusting. He's no doubt one of those that worships Dumbledore. I'm a lawyer, Harry just lied as he agreed with Seraph readily. I'm afraid I can't discuss it with you, as it is a sensitive and confidential topic, mister? The man nodded a little uncertainly. I'm Arthur Weasley, he said, offering his hand with a small smile. Harry shook it, a little surprised this man was so easily swayed. I'm a friend of the Potters, he continued. Well, I'm Harry Avalon, Harry responded as he released his hand. He held back a grimace as he was stupid enough to give his real name, but he was thankful the man showed no sign of recognition. Well, I don't suppose you'll take me to them, would you? He asked hopefully. They aren't in some kind of trouble, are they? Arthur asked a little worriedly. Harry smiled. No, I just have a few matters to discuss with them. He couldn't actually say he wanted to beat the living shit out of them then transform into his armor and slaughter them. Though he knew he wouldn't, it was what he wanted. After all, they betrayed him. Mr. Weasley smiled. Let me see your left forearm. Harry blinked in surprise and got nervous. Why? He asked in confusion, and gulped. Arthur looked surprised and a little suspicious. Because if you're not a Death Eater you won't have the dark mark on your arm, he replied reasonably. Oh, well, I'm not even a wizard. I'm from the outside, he answered as he lifted his arm with a sheepish smile. Sorry it doesn't come off, it's just a fancy computer, and the key's back in the office. It's so important information can't be stolen. Harry looked up from his arm as he pulled his sleeve back down and startled as the man had a look of awe on his face. Wow, that is brilliant, he said after a few moments. The things you muggles come up with, he continued, staring at the device in Harry's ear in wonderment. That thing. Is it a phone like my daughter's friend showed me once? She said these phones are advancing so. No, Harry quickly interrupted as he pulled a sleek black phone from his pocket which housed his company logo as it was on his company's network. The earpiece is just wirelessly connected to the phone so I can talk while having both hands free, he answered as he put his phone back into his pocket. That is absolutely incredible, he answered, amazed and grinning broadly. But I suppose you're a busy man and need to see the Potters soon, he said, chuckling as Harry nodded in agreement. Yes sir, very much so, if it's not too much trouble, he agreed with a smile. Harry found he liked this guy. He supposed that he may be too trusting, but he had got a good heart in his chest and certainly was a good man. Hopefully he'll see reason when his identity was discovered and not fight for the crazy old man. Okay, follow me, the man said as he walked Harry over to the fireplace and handed him some odd grey powder. I can't take you to the Potters and back as I have to get back to work after some incident, but I can take you to my house where my daughter can take you and bring you back. Harry nodded in agreement but just stared confusedly at the powder. Arthur chuckled. Just throw it in the fire and say loudly and clearly, "The burrow," then step into the emerald flames and it will take you there. I'll be in right behind you. Harry shrugged in thought. This should be interesting, he chuckled as he threw it in. Startled as the huge emerald flames flared up, he stepped into them. The burrow, he said. Harry felt himself spinning around and around, but it was more like twisting and turning, hurtling fast. He got glimpses of what he guessed to be other fireplaces, and could hear Seraph speak her amazement. Harry, Seraph said in awe. I've had to increase my sense of time by quite a margin to see and hear what's happening in there. This is warping space-time, or something like that. I'm scanning as much as I can. Wonderland will love when I show them these readings. You can perceive a passage of time, she said in awe. But here it's been less than the second it took to step through the flames. It's like you're in 3 places at once. The start point, the end point, which is further southwest, and within some kind of network of wormholes, and then you're also within this event horizon. Yeah, Harry mumbled while feeling queasy. I'm glad you're enjoying the bastardization of science because I feel like I'm going to hurl. Well, lucky you're not going far, she replied. 2, 1, Seraph counted down smugly. Harry was just thinking he was going to puke when he went flying out in a burst of emerald flames, tripping and landing with a crash to the floor. Oh, by the way, brace yourself, you are not going to stick the landing, Seraph commented while sounding like she was trying unsuccessfully not to laugh. Yeah. Once you stepped in and were swept away you stopped stepping forward, so the momentum just tossed you out. It seems to me that you need to think of it more as an automatic door. Like those spinning doorways in older office buildings. You don't stop walking. Harry groaned in frustration as he was going to inform Seraph that forewarning would have been nice, but knew that was no good anyway as he couldn't move much while trapped in the energy of that wormhole network. He would just have to remember to carry on his step next time and hope for the best. However, he was distracted by some giggling, which caused him to look up in surprise. Scrambling to his feet, Harry quickly started brushing soot from his clothes, and blushing as he looked around the mismatched yet homely-looking lounge with weird things all over the place, such as a clock that had named hands with what was likely family members' names on them, and places like home, school, and mortal peril on it instead of numbers. Somebody had issues when they thought about a freaky clock that had mortal peril as an option for family members. However, better than the crazy clock were the 2 cute girls about his age sitting on a sofa together in stitches while they giggled at him. Damn stupid fireplace. The girl with the orange and red hair with cute freckles dancing over her nose with chocolate-colored eyes winked at him while the other with raven black hair and brilliant green eyes rolled them at her friend. They both wore similar black-robed outfits that somehow hugged them in extremely complimentary ways, more like long dresses than robes. Wow, Ginny, the raven-haired girl giggled. When did you get a function on your fire to spit out cute men? I don't know Amy, but I'm glad we have it, giggled the red-haired girl. Hi, said Harry, blushing a little more in embarrassment. I'm Harry. Well, I'm Amanda Potter and this is Ginny Weasley, said the raven-haired young woman, both standing with mischievous grins. Harry smiled a little, hoping very much that Amanda did not know of his existence, because if she did it might mean she didn't want him. Though it could mean that she was stopped. Though, in fairness, he just wanted his sister. As he looked at her, it was like he had always been missing her and only just then realized she had been stolen from him. Oh, so you've already met, Mr. Avalon, interrupted Arthur from behind as he stepped through the fire the correct way. Harry noted with a slight annoyance as the man could have explained the correct way of using that weird magic. Yeah, Dad, agreed Ginny, grinning cheekily. Where'd you find him? Can you find another for Amy? She asked laughingly. Hey, who said you get this one? Argued Amanda. Harry winced. That was so wrong, but looking at her he wondered whether he could find it in him to turn her down, or whether he would want to. Arthur chuckled, amused at their crazy antics. No, he's actually looking for your parents, Amanda. He's a lawyer with something he needs to speak with them about, but I haven't got time to escort him there and back. Oh, a lawyer, cooed Amanda cheerfully. Hey Dad, aren't we all supposed to be at the order meeting at Amy's in a few minutes anyway? Asked Ginny, looking surprised. Harry frowned but wasn't worried. It just meant the whole of this order would discover that the Potter parents were bastards. Yeah, but I can't get off work with all of the mess earlier. Anyway, I was there and saw that Cyber Knight, and that brilliant robot thing, so I don't really need to be there. I wish I could have seen them. I bet the Cyber Knight is really cute, whined Amy, pouting cutely. How would you know? Asked Ginny with her own sweet pout. Dad said he was wearing a helmet. But he's a hero, aren't all heroes supposed to be cute? She retorted smugly. Look at me, I'm cute, she added, sticking out her pink little tongue at her friend. Okay girl, I'll concede, you win this one, Ginny replied laughingly. Arthur coughed, regaining their attention. Well, I'll leave you two to take Mr. Avalon to see Lily and James, he said, getting a bye from each before he was quick to leave via the fire. Avalon, Amy said with a thoughtful frown. Like Camelot and all of that stuff? Harry shrugged while laughing. I guess. So, either of you two have any brothers or sisters? He asked curiously. He figured it was as good a way as any to ask Amanda without asking and make it sound like he was just making small talk. Ginny rolled her eyes, looking annoyed. I have 6 brothers, do you want one? She asked hopefully, her eyes brightening at the thought. Harry laughed while rolling his eyes. No thanks. How about you, Amanda? Oh, just call me Amy, she said. Then Ginny cut in. Hey, I thought I was the only one to get away with calling you that? Amy shrugged, grinning. Nah, to be honest I like it, I just like being difficult. Anyway, he's super cute, which would make him the exception anyway, she said laughingly as she returned her attention back to Harry. Unfortunately, I don't, she said with a sad sigh while Ginny seemed to snicker silently. Sometimes it feels like I'm missing something, so I suppose I always wanted one, she shrugged, and her grin returned. Why'd you ask? Do you have any? Harry shrugged. Just small talk, he answered quickly, hoping that didn't sound too corny or suspicious. I just found out recently that I have a twin sister. Oh, that must have been nice. What's she like? She asked with a giant smile, happy for him. That would be so cool. Well, she seems nice enough, though I haven't spent enough time with her yet to know for sure. Hey, why didn't you know you have a twin? Interrupted Ginny, befuddled. Harry smiled sadly and shrugged. My parents sent me away when I was a baby and kept her. I hope to soon find out why. He shrugged sadly. Well, you said something about a meeting. You're going to be late if we don't hurry. The girls noticed the quick change in subject but didn't say anything, as they knew it was probably a fresh and touchy subject for him. Well, come on then, agreed Ginny with what she hoped was a supportive smile and not anything too flirty, as she showed them to a flower pot full of what they called flu powder. Harry felt a grimace coming on as Seraph spoke to him. Great, I have a ton of people geeking out for more bandwidth-intensive scans of the network. Internally groaning, Harry took some of the powder with Amanda right next to him as she took some too. Yeah, I don't like this either, Amanda agreed sheepishly to Harry's pale expression. Just try to keep walking as you enter the flames and you should stick the landing, but even we screw it up sometimes and we've been doing it for years. Harry nodded and smiled as Amanda gave him her address, and a moment later, he was stepping through the emerald flames once more. CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 4. Reunion. It only took a few minutes to get to Potter Manor, and Harry was impressed with himself remembering to keep walking, so he didn't go flying out of the fireplace, so he didn't look as stupid in front of Amanda and Ginny. However, Harry did forget to move out the way of the fire. Therefore, he was startled as one after the other both girls walked out of the fire and crashed into his back. Harry chuckled sheepishly as he turned to see them both pressed up to him, squeezed between him and the huge fireplace in the entrance chamber they were in. Whoa, Ginny muttered as she wound her arms around him. Feel this, Amy. He has actual muscle, she said laughingly while his sister made sure to have a feel too. Damn, Amanda muttered. Hey. Hands, Harry said, jumping forward a couple of steps and glared half-heartedly at the girls. They only smirked and laughed while collecting low fives from each other, which ended with Amanda holding onto Ginny's arm as she gave Harry a wink as she pulled her friend after her, and Harry sighed as they led the way. They'll be in the guest hall, Amanda said. You have a hall just for guests? Harry asked as he looked around the lavish entrance hall. Amanda looked embarrassedly sheepish. Well, yeah, seeing someone else ask that, it does sound silly. Yeah, Harry agreed while Ginny snickered. But anyway, this place is nice. Amy, you must be swimming in money, Harry commented as he was hoping to forget the first trip through the fire, and the groping sister on his second trip, and especially the laughing in his ear. However, inside Harry was also quite pissed off. The possibility of a lack of money could not be the reason his parents abandoned him. He could perhaps understand that if he had been given up to the state, but not what happened to him, not to them. You aren't going to try for me for the money, are you? She asked cheekily in that Welsh accent she had somehow diluted somewhat. Harry chuckled while shaking his head as the girls led him through the house. No, money doesn't interest me anymore. Oh, so you have money, she replied interestedly. You could say that, he shrugged. Well, considering he was one of the richest men on Earth, maybe even the richest, he wasn't sure where he rated and didn't really care. Ah, they're in here, said Ginny a little jealously. She really wanted this boy. Money did not really mean too much to her. Though, a nice husband with enough to support a family someday would be nice and keep her busybody mother out of her business. They walked into a huge lounge. Somehow Harry was expecting an actual hall, with about 40 people sitting around while Albus Dumbledore was speaking, however, stopped when he noticed them. Harry had the urge to just smack the bastard old man full force in the face just to make himself feel good. Ah, Mississippi, Weasley, Mississippi, Potter, glad you could both make it, the old man said with a grandfatherly smile, his eyes twinkling a mile a second, but even Harry could tell that Ginny and Amanda had no interest in even humoring him. Harry, he's at it again, he's... Wait. Seraph began, but trailed off for a moment. He's using his ability on the girls, but I don't believe he's seeing the truth. I'm not sure, as our psychic detection scanners are still so young and a phone is a bit on the shitty side for perfect accuracy, and the night systems aren't optimized to be any better without full armor activation. The old man tried this magic on them when he couldn't get to you. It seems they know what he's like and are consciously defending themselves with some kind of magic without him realizing. And who might your guest be? Dumbledore asked after just a moment, staring back at Harry in curiosity, though if they let him know what they talked about he was just curious about his reason for being here. Oh, he's a lawyer, came to speak with Mum and Dad, piped in Amanda as she placed on a cheerful mask. Harry's heartbeat shot up as his parents stood. So, what's your name, who sent you? Asked Lily, looking a little worried. Harry now glared at them as he slid his hand into his coat and pulled out a matte black plastic handgun with a CyberTech logo on the side in white and pointed it at his mother. He ignored both Ginny and Amy as they stared at him in shock and fear, and shot a red bolt of light smashing a vase when a few people went for weapons, which stopped them in their tracks before quickly flicking a switch and mentally saying oops as he had it set for kill. Well, it wasn't kill, but set to blow holes and things as the bolt of energy came to a stop in the far wall and burning a hole in it. The non-lethal setting created a low-energy field of energy that interfered with a person's natural electromagnetic field that created a flash of pressure in the body to knock them out. Hello Mother, Father, nice weather we're having today, isn't it? He greeted and asked sarcastically, not showing any sign about what the red blast would do. Wait, what? Amanda was the first to speak after several silent moments as she looked to her parents. She might have been on bad terms with them as they followed Dumbledore's orders like puppets, but no way they couldn't have. However, as she watched them pale, and watched Harry holding his weapon on them, she couldn't help but know it was real. She turned her attention to Dumbledore and saw that flash of anger he got when one of his stupidly huge and elaborate schemes was ruined or set back. She saw that look a lot as she was party to ruining all of his ridiculous schemes. Now, Mr. Potter, the old man spoke calmly, but commandingly, though Harry did not lower his gun. There is no need for violence. I'm sure we can all work this out like civilized adults. Yeah, possibly, he agreed before firing a green bolt and smashing another vase, and they gasped, and he realized because of the color they thought it was a killer like Voldemort and his murderers used. However, he continued, I don't feel like being very civilized right now, and I'm the guy with the gun, so why don't you shut the fuck up, you fucking stupid old bastard, before I do the world a favor and kill you. What do you want? Demanded James suddenly. I want answers, Father. Now tell me, he replied as the gun aim trained on him. Why did you dump me on the doorstep of those bastards to suffer, to be tortured and beaten by my dear mother's sick and twisted bitch of a sister and her fat fuck husband?" he demanded angrily. Amanda's eyes widened in horror. Her mum at least looked a little guilty, her dad just looked scared. Mostly everyone had some kind of reaction, but she wasn't surprised in the least that it didn't faze Dumbledore, and she was almost certain he knew how Harry would be treated. Harry's eyes then flashed back to her mum and he actually growled. He was so angry. "You know, for the past 14 years your bony bitch of a sister has been in prison just like her husband, and their filthy bastard of a son was in Borstal, now in jail for assaulting a girl. They had to answer for their crimes, and someday you'll be held accountable. So why, dear mother, don't you answer me?" They all jumped in surprise as he yelled the last two words, and his emerald-colored eyes were actually glowing with power, and Amy was surprised that she felt magic at all coming from him, but this was oppressive, almost as strong as her when pissed while still holding back. It was just a shame for them that Amanda was also pissed and drew her wand, as they could feel her magic drawing to the surface and pointing it at Dumbledore as he drew his wand, and several other brave members theirs. Though Harry didn't seem bothered, and Amanda was certain he could fire his gun multiple times before most could fire one spell. It was Dumbledore. Harry was surprised as he saw the man who volunteered this piece of information, though Amy and Harry had both suspected he was behind it. The man had long, almost mullet-like, black hair and pale blue eyes, and looked at the Potter parents angrily. "Dumbledore told them it would be best," he continued. "He said that with an older brother in the way that he would get in the way and protect Amanda from her destiny. And if you did that, she—" "Shut up, Sirius," the old man demanded. However, Sirius continued. "There was a second prophecy, Amanda," he said. Dumbledore looked as if he was about to use magic on him to shut him up, but in his distraction, Amanda hit him with a pink jet of magic and his wand soared out of his hand into hers, to his shock and horror. "You best hurry and continue, Sirius, or I'm so kicking your sorry ass," Amanda demanded, and he gulped. "Well, anyway, you want to hear it?" he asked, and Harry and Amanda as well as others nodded. "The one who defeated the Dark Lord shall be defended by her Knight of Blood." "Sirius, stop," the old man commanded, but he just continued. "The world will learn of his fury, and Mana's secrets shall be forever told. The one with the power to defeat the Dark Lord shall be saved from her destiny's dark path, and the Dark Lord can lose to the world of knowledge, and the Knight shall set his blood free." Harry and Amy's eyes widened as they both thought over those words, but it was Amy who was first to talk. I don't understand. You mean you've practically kept me prisoner from my own life following that other prophecy, when this one says my brother, my twin brother would have saved me from all of this? Listen to me, Amanda," Dumbledore finally spoke in a gentle and compassionate voice. "Think about what it says. It says he would have revealed the magical world. We couldn't. Do you think I give a shit?" she retorted heatedly. "Voldemort and his fucks have been murdering innocent people. Mr. Potter," the old man began nervously. "Avalon. My name is Harry Avalon," he interrupted angrily. "Ironic that I took this name for my new start before I even knew of magic. I took it to honor a friend who passed. She was with me at the orphanage, and he trailed to a stop and glared defiantly at anyone who dared look his way." Quite," the old man agreed nervously, but he completely missed the point. "But I'm sure you can see that what I did was for the greater good of my people, as the prophecy says that you would have outed the magical world to protect your sister." "Of course, I understand," Harry agreed, and Dumbledore smiled for all of 2 seconds. "You're a fucking retard," he finished, wiping the smile from the old man's face. "Then I'm afraid I'll have to deal with you myself," the old man said, standing up as another wand found its way into his hand. "You likely won't enjoy the rest of your life in Azkaban prison." Harry just laughed. "You think you can do shit to me, old man? I already have my people on their way, and they shall be here shortly." Dumbledore chuckled in amusement. "Nobody knows where you are." He began smirking. Harry interrupted with a smirk of his own. "We are in Wales, 15 Graviton Avenue in the southeast," he chuckled amusedly as Dumbledore looked beyond, freaked with wide eyes. How?" the old man asked in horror. "Oh, my gods!" interrupted a bushy-haired young woman standing and staring at Harry. He did take note that she hadn't taken her wand out, and looked like she needed a bit of sun in her life. Her pale skin was a little paler with a rose tinge as she saw she had everyone's attention, but she ventured on anyway. "I knew I recognized that name. He's the founder, owner and controller of CyberTech." His company is on par with the likes of Stark Industries. Clever girl, smiled Harry appreciatively. But that's not nice comparing us. After all, Tony's not as cool as me, he said jokingly, which caused her cheeks to light up a little more. Harry was actually quite surprised that the young witch knew him and seemed to be in awe. What does that have to do with anything? Interrupted Dumbledore in annoyance. I haven't ever heard of either of these companies and I see no relevance as to how he could possibly know where we are. They're called satellites, you idiot, replied Harry amusedly, rolling his eyes. They can track me anywhere. What's a satellite? He asked, looking at Hermione. And what about the magical protections? Satellites are machines that orbit the Earth, she replied in thought. I don't think every satellite could penetrate the wards, but his most probably can and have. I wouldn't be too surprised if there might be others that can too if his has. Like. Harry chuckled amusedly and interrupted her. So, Miss Granger, Hermione Granger, she replied, blushing. She could barely believe that the Harry Avalon was talking to her of all people, and he was one of her friend's twin brother. You know your stuff, eh? He asked, and she nodded. Well, what could 40 wizards do against 2 Black Hawk gunship helicopters? Hermione's eyes widened. Run away very fast, she replied nervously. Or almost likely die, she added, looking at the rest of the order and realizing that none of them were very fit, and they would have to get through the fire or out of the wards before they could escape. Harry smirked. Yep, looking at this lot I would guess at the second option, he replied smugly as they all started hearing the distinctive sound of propellers getting nearer, with the sound of engines. Oh, don't mind them, that's just my ride home, he chuckled. That fireplace wormhole network of yours makes me feel sick, so I would much rather fly. I guess I can understand that, Hermione said sheepishly. That thing makes me queasy too. I've been using them for years, Sirius said with an impish smile. I still feel sick. Enough, Dumbledore interrupted urgently. Could these satellites find Voldemort? He asked, and there was something about the way he asked that made Harry wonder. Harry eyed him suspiciously. No, they can only detect concentrated bursts of magic, he replied, shrugging before a smirk lined his lips. Oh, I thought I would let you know that I can tell you, or anyone, the location of every magical nest on the planet, he spoke in amusement as everyone's eyes widened. Isn't it strange how these prophecies never come true until some moron hears about it and tries to stop it? Self-fulfillment, if you ask me. That isn't fortune-telling. That's manipulating probability. They may seem the same, but they're 2 different psychic branches. Harry's eyes scanned over Amanda as she couldn't hold in her snort of humor, as it made much more sense than it being a fortune. You crazy old man, Amanda said with a snicker. It was just like what happened to Voldemort when he heard the other shit-ass prophecy and tried to kill me. She then grabbed Ginny's and Harry's arms and pulled them back towards the door, as she saw a huge white luxury helicopter landing outside the front of the house, with a huge red T inside a huge red C designed like cogs for a logo to this company her brother seemed to own. You can just fuck off, Dumbledore, she continued. And those of you that side with him too, you can fuck off, because Ginny and I are leaving with my twin brother. And if you don't like it? She shrugged as she gestured out the window where 2 large black helicopters hovered, pointing their weapons at the house. Harry just smirked as he led the girls out into the hall, and the 3 of them moved fast to flee the house through the entrance hall, and large front doors into the monumental gardens, and to the white helicopter. As a larger green one had landed behind it, and several armed men in black military uniforms with red CyberTech badges over their chests secured the white helicopter, holding black assault rifles at the ready. Whoa, Ginny mumbled in awe before squealing with Amy as a tall black woman pulled them both closer to the helicopter, and they saw a white guy getting rejected as he tried the same with Harry, and they looked to see Dumbledore and a few other foolish members of the Order with wands raised. Ginny may be naive to the Muggle world, but she did know one thing, and that was these men and women in black were soldiers, trained to kill. Mr. Potter, called Dumbledore over the noise of the chopper's propellers. However, the black woman spared them no more thought as she pulled open the white helicopter's sliding door and helped both Ginny and Amanda up and in before turning to Harry and waiting. I can't let you take Amanda. Damn, this bastard is really pissing me off, Harry spoke in annoyance. One last warning, Dumbledore, he called out before turning, and as he climbed up into the helicopter, he gave his order. Disable them, but do not kill them if it can be helped. The black woman nodded as she slid the helicopter's door closed and spun round, glaring with weapon raised. She could see the old man was about to fire something and she wasn't willing to find out what. Her gun exploded out one round, hitting the old fool in the shoulder of his one arm. It caused him to drop his stick as his other hand reflex came up over his bloody wound and shot before he dropped to his butt with wide eyes. The other Order members went down in a similar fashion only moments later by the other soldiers, crying out in pain before the men in black were quick to get into their helicopter as Mr. Avalon's helicopter had taken to the sky, and they soon followed after it with the gunships flagging it for protection. CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 5. Seraph of Emotions. The Order of the Phoenix was in disarray as Sirius joined other members outside and watched as the four Muggle helicopters flew off. He had told James and Lily all those years ago that listening to Dumbledore about Harry would probably come back to bite them painfully on the arse, and here they were 22 years later and they had lost both children. It was ironic that Dumbledore did this because he was scared of one prophecy taking place, but in doing so he only fueled the prophecy into action. Sirius couldn't be sure that Harry would actually reveal the magical world, but it was made clear he could if he wanted to. Anyway, the prophecy had never made it clear that's what it meant. Sirius had never been too sure that the stupid prophecy actually meant that in the first place and couldn't really put much faith in fortune-telling like Harry said. All of that crap was more like messing around with possibilities. After all, the second prophecy contradicted the first, which pretty much admitted that fate and destiny were not written in stone, and they were both bitches up to more troublesomeness than Sirius ever thought possible at school. He was just happy, and thankful that Harry was okay and doing well, and now had taken Amanda. Sirius knew the girl would be happier with her brother and would have a lot more freedom. Anyway, only the Dumbledore worshippers believed that Voldemort was after her at all. It was quite common knowledge really that the girl who lived had been denied any real training to fight Voldemort. That Dumbledore had openly stopped her learning what she wanted. Though, Sirius knew that did little to hamper her, and when normal magics were denied her, she had seen fit to raid Sirius's family libraries, and delve a little into some less savory avenues of casting before Molly Weasley saw fit to remove all the books at his old family home that he let the Order use only to shut them up. Sirius didn't blame Amanda for delving a little into the dark arts as it was all that was left for her to learn with Dumbledore spying on her everywhere, and Sirius sure as hell wasn't going to stop her. It served the old bastard right. Amanda had been an adult for 6 years and his followers treated her and Ginny like misbehaving children, as they pretty much restricted what either could do. Dumbledore should probably think himself lucky that Amanda hadn't lashed out and killed him. It had been obvious to non-worshippers that the girl had been close to just attacking him on many occasions. However, the worst part was, the old man didn't ever think he was in the wrong, and his supporters thought he was unflappable. Heck, the old bastard had practically declared war on the Muggles for the whole of the wizarding world as if he had any such right, and still he didn't think he was in the wrong. Someone was seeing to Dumbledore's wound now, and the fool kept sprouting off crap about getting Amanda back. That they would have no choice but to fight this madman, Harry Avalon, and it was riling up Dumbledore's more fanatical supporters. Even those who got shot wouldn't see reason, leading Sirius to wonder whether it would have been better to have gotten a ride with Harry, Ginny, and Amanda home. They were starting to remind him of the Death Eaters. It was as if the old man had them eating out of his self-righteous hands even when he made no argument or sense. Whoa, sighed Hermione suddenly. Harry Avalon is so cool, she added before looking down at the old man and fools that got shot as if she almost forgot they were there. Finally, someone had put Dumbledore and his idiots in their place. Though, it looked like the warning had gone right over the old headmaster's head. Sirius chuckled. Well, I have to admit, Harry has style, he agreed with the girl, and felt a little jealous as he noted it wasn't just Hermione looking lovesick. But then, rich, smart, good-looking, tall, muscles, and Muggle soldiers and awesome Muggle flying machines, at his command. What are you talking about? Demanded Lily suddenly as she was spared from being shot. He just kidnapped our baby. I'm going to call the Auras. I don't think that very wise, Mrs. Potter, interrupted Hermione. First, she left by herself and she's 23, nearly 24, and second, Harry Avalon's security at CyberTech will be so tight the Auras would never get past the lobby. Then we'll force our way in, answered James looking smug. Do you not listen? Interrupted a young blonde woman as her pale blue eyes looked at the man in annoyance. If the Order of the Phoenix continues down this road, Mr. Potter, then we will have declared war on the Muggle world, on behalf of every witch and wizard on the planet whether they want it or not. I for one would prefer not to go to war with them. After all, we still have Voldemort and his Death Eaters to deal with. The fact of the matter is I do not wish to end up in a supervillain prison, thank you very much. Yeah, neither do I, Hermione agreed, nodding her head, though only a few people seemed to know what they were talking about. Even though it was pretty self-explanatory, some mage could be so thick sometimes. But of course, if news gets out about our war, we'll have superheroes after us too, commented a young man with mousy brown hair. Like that Captain Britain guy I've seen in the news, or worse, in the whole of the Avengers. You've obviously lost the plot if you want to go after someone like Harry Avalon. What the hell are you talking about? Demanded James heatedly. Those Muggles kidnapped my daughter. Even now you care nothing for your son, Hermione spoke frostily. It leads me to believe you only care about the girl who lived and not your daughter, Amanda Potter. No, Amanda Avalon. Go ahead and try kidnapping Amy, you loser, and see where that gets you. Meanwhile, oblivious to the arguments about to take place with Dumbledore and his group, and the embarrassingly small number of mage who weren't that ignorant, Amanda, Ginny, and Harry were in the helicopter, flying towards London, and away from the crazies. So, bro, Amanda began, shyly blushing. Where shall we be staying? She asked with a slightly worried frown. Oh, he thought for a moment before shrugging. You can both stay with me, I have spare rooms and beds and stuff. But what about Voldemort and Dumbledore? She continued worriedly. I doubt Voldemort will care enough to try killing me, but Dumbledore's a freaking nut job. He'll keep coming and coming. He doesn't listen to anyone but that senile old voice in his head. You'll have to get some wards, Ginny interrupted from where she sat buckled up next to him. But they might not hold up against the likes of Dumbledore. Oh, so these wards are those barriers Seraph is picking up all over the planet? Harry asked in deep thought. Do either of you know what stops someone from teleporting through them? My oldest brother Bill once told me that they stop magic from entering, Ginny replied in thought. But he said they don't stop mana from entering, which is why we can't transport in using magic, but we can walk through. Though, portkeys and people can be tuned into the wards so they can get through, but not many places allow that, as it is possible to fake a magical signature and trick the ward. I see, he muttered thoughtfully. But what happens if someone hits the ward? He asked them. They just slide off and get diverted, normally back to their start point. Amanda answered helpfully. Most of the time things like that are accidents where someone tries to apparate too close to the ward and clip it. Most places like Diagon Alley or the Ministry's wards will alert them to an idiot trying to get through the wards, but they're normally smart enough to know whether someone just missed the apparition points. Interesting, Harry muttered with a smirk. These wards sound just like my distortion field technology. I believe with a little tweaking that it should be possible to stop anyone from outside teleporting in or out. My research department has already been reconfiguring the field to mess with teleportation, but hopefully with some more information on wards we'll get something more impressive. You've invented something that is like a Muggle ward? Amanda asked in wide-eyed awe. Harry shrugged sheepishly. Yeah, I guess, he nodded in agreement. But from what our scans say, these wards are layers upon layers of shielding, whereas my distortion fields could possibly do everything they do with a single resonating field. It would take less power and be more powerful, and quite a lot more efficient, I would think, with a program to run the system, and rotate a changing encryption, and the... Wow, that's awesome, Amanda quickly interrupted in awe while looking lost, and not needing her newly found brother to go into too much more detail or her brain might explode. You're like a genius or something. He laughed and winked. Well, I don't like to blow my own horn, but... Wait a minute. Yes, I do, so yep. I've created wonders that would no doubt wow you adorable magical girls, he said laughingly. Like what? Ginny asked interestedly while she and Amanda blushed. Dad loves Muggle stuff. If it's too good you'll win him over with a look around. Harry laughed, rolling his eyes. You'll just have to wait and see, he told them, amused as they both puppy dog pouted at him. I'm still not telling you, he said laughingly. The two girls moaned with cute little huffs as they sulked for a short while before Amanda began asking questions. So, where do you live? How big is your apartment? She asked eagerly. She had not lived away from her parents before and could not wait. She was pushing the thought of them from her mind as they had done some seriously messed up things on Dumbledore's orders, but throwing out their own son was by far the most foul, especially when she knew that her Muggle aunt and uncle were in jail for child abuse. Amanda could never forgive them or Dumbledore for what they did to her brother and knew she would never return. Maybe Harry would give her and Ginny a job. She knew the main reason her best friend was with her was because Ginny went where she went, but also because her mother and brother, Ron, were super fanatical Dumbledore lovers, and it was bad for her safety to stay there alone. Though Amy had to admit it had also probably got something to do with her cute rich brother. Not that Ginny was a gold digger or anything, as she always refused handouts from her and had never asked for anything. Her red-haired friend was way too stubborn. She would rather get a job. Though, neither had actually been allowed jobs before, so they both had to stay living out of their parents' pockets. It made her mad just thinking about it. Well, it has 7 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, a large kitchen and dining room, with a massive lounge, a cinema, a swimming pool, a bowling alley, and probably rooms I've never been in before. It's in my London CyberTech building, so I don't have to go far to get to work, he replied amusedly. So, you going to give us paying work or what? Amanda just blurted out, as that was what she wanted. She didn't want to be sponging off her brother, and she would need something to keep her busy. Harry shrugged in thought. I don't see why not, he agreed, nodding. I could use a secretary. My last one turned out to be a freaking SHIELD spy. Now the screening process is so much tougher, it's hard to get someone trustworthy. He rolled his eyes. And I could also use a personal assistant. I hate writing memos and crap like that, and using Seraph to do it isn't the same, plus she can't leave the building. Yet. So it can be inconvenient, he laughed amusedly. Okay, Amy began but trailed off as her eyes widened. Wait, a spy? What the heck is SHIELD? Blah, he said, shrugging. Just a secret government strike force that operates primarily in the UN countries out of the US. It's no big deal. They didn't get anything worth mentioning and I sent her back in a box, special delivery. You killed her? Amy and Ginny declared together, shocked and horrified. No, he replied, amused. Tied up and sedated, he answered to their relief. The Colonel was most certainly not pleased, but he couldn't say shit as he was committing a crime by planting the spy. Oh, well, okay, said Amanda, relieved her brother didn't murder the spy. Though, by the sound of it, these SHIELD guys wouldn't have and couldn't have done anything about it if Harry had killed the spy. So, what does a secretary do exactly? She asked. Harry just shrugged. I'm not too sure about the finer details, but answering phones, patching through calls to me and sending in clients etc. if they have a meeting with me, and you'll have to ask Seraph about all the details. Okay, I'll take it, and Ginny can do the other one, she answered with a nod but blushed and looked worried a moment later. Someone will show us how everything works, right? Yeah, don't worry. Seraph will help you through everything you both need to learn, he agreed. And then it's just a matter of learning as you go. So, who's Seraph? Ginny suddenly asked, hoping she didn't sound too curious. She's my computer network, he replied with a small knowing smirk. Ginny may not know much as she sighed in relief, but she did know computers weren't pretty girls that could be competition. So, what's the pay? Amy asked, smiling a little as her friend had almost made a fool of herself. Seraph says the pay is an estimated $109,000 per year before taxes, he replied with a shrug. Whoa. Damn, that's most certainly a lot more than Hermione gets working at Hogwarts, she declared with a wide grin. Hermione barely makes £9,000 a year in Muggle money. Wow, your friend's getting fucked over, Harry answered. Damn, that's little. Heck, what you'll both be getting is just the starter wage, plus you get the usual expenses, life and health insurance, as well as pension, etc. Wait a minute, Amanda suddenly said in thought. How did Seraph tell you how much the jobs give? She asked as she tried not to think about how much every penny of her wage including that would come to. Heck, Ginny had just gone from rags to riches, as the saying goes. Only Ginny's twin brothers could possibly claim to be better off than her right then. Harry laughed, raising an amused eyebrow and tapping the black thing in his right ear. We've been in constant communication since I left the building. Wow, I never noticed that, she answered sheepishly. But what about Voldemort? I already feel like I'm doing nothing. He has to be stopped, he's killing innocent people. Don't you worry, he replied, reaching over and taking her hands in his. "I won't let the bastard get away with it. However, I believe our immediate threat is Albus Dumbledore. Though, I'm doubtful that he or his Order of the Phoenix has a clue, so hopefully his defeat shall be a simple matter of when the time comes." "But, how can you?" asked Ginny worriedly. "Dumbledore and Voldemort have magic on their side." Harry laughed as he patted his left forearm. "Well, I have science, and my science is far greater than their magic shall ever be, as they lack imagination." "Oh," mumbled Amy uncertainly. She supposed she and Ginny shouldn't judge until they had seen what her brother could do. "So, how long until we land?" she asked to hopefully change the subject. Harry shrugged. However, Amy and Ginny jumped as they heard a girlish giggle coming from the helicopter's speakers. 2 minutes and counting, Miss Avalon," she replied giggily. Amanda was flabbergasted. "Wow, who is she?" "My name is Seraph," she answered, amused. "My darling, Harry, you should talk more about me. After all, I am awesome." "Darling?" asked Amy mockingly, as both she and Ginny snickered. Harry blushed again when Seraph giggled over the speakers. "He thinks I'm childish," she commented amusedly. "He keeps forgetting I am only 3, she giggled again before going silent. "3?" asked Amy frowning, her giggles forgotten. "Hang on, how can your computer talk and laugh?" Harry smiled and just shook his head in amusement. "You'll see," was all he said as the helicopter came in for a landing. The 2 girls looked out of the windows and gasped loudly. "Oh my god, that building's massive," commented Ginny in awe. Though, in all honesty, massive seemed to be quite the understatement. The building was something the likes Ginny had never seen before, walls upon walls of glass and black metal with a huge red T in a Red Sea logo like cogs on the side she could see with windows curving around it. It was certainly the tallest building in the whole city as it towered over the others. She was almost certain that nobody could get lost looking for this building. She noted the lower, step-like roof about halfway down as the helicopter began its descent towards it and some kind of landing platform. "Why don't we land on the higher roof?" Amanda suddenly asked just as the helicopter touched down and the propeller blades started slowing as the engine cut out, and they could see the other helicopters flying past to wherever they would land. Harry just chuckled. "It's too windy up there to be very safe, which makes it harder to land. But here, part of the building actually shields us, plus we're low enough that it's not too windy," he answered, smiling as he slid the door open and unbuckled his seatbelt before unbuckling the girls. "Well, come on," he said as he hopped out and helped them down before leading them towards a set of double doors. They reached the doors and the 2 girls started as they slid open automatically and they walked into a huge blue corridor with a few doors leading off to the sides, but up ahead 3 elevators. "Darling," giggled Seraph as she seemed to appear out of nowhere as they stopped in the hall and the door behind them slid shut. She then turned her attention to Ginny and Amy with a wide smile. "It's nice to meet you 2 in person," she giggled, taking the 2 confused girls' hands and leading them towards the elevators with Harry alongside. "You'll love living here," she chimed overjoyed. Who are you?" asked Amy beyond confused. The girl sounded like her brother's computer, but computers could not walk around and talk, could they? "I'm Seraph, silly," she giggled amusedly. The 2 girls double-took as they reached a lift and the door just opened and they walked in, stopping the doors closed, and they ascended. "But Harry said Seraph's a computer, not a girl. Are you a robot or something?" "No, silly," she giggled. "I'm a hard-light holographic representation of a human. I am the CyberTech mainframe network. Seraph. People think my name is an anagram, but it's just a name. Though, I sometimes make something silly up. And technically if I was a machine, I would be an android. Robots aren't as correct as I am." "But you feel so real," said Amy in awe. "And you laugh and make fun." Seraph smirked. "I am the most advanced system on the face of the planet," she informed them smugly. "What's holographic mean?" interrupted Ginny, befuddled. "Oh, it's compressing, bending, and projecting low-yield ultraviolet light beams into." Harry paused as they both looked lost. "We twist light to create physical illusions, and manipulate sound waves to field." They still looked lost. "It's scientific magic. The whole building has a holographic grid made from light emitters," he said with a sigh as they nodded along in thought that time. "Seraph is the Seraph Network's avatar and uses an advanced AI, artificial intelligence I call the S-Core. She also utilizes the EPU, which is the Emotional Processing Unit." "Whoa, whispered Amy in shock. I didn't get much of that, but when you mentioned you're a genius, I had no idea how wrong that was. You're like a super genius. Harry blushed at her praise. I also have much more fun system cores. I can actually feel physical things, piped in Seraph proudly. I can produce saliva and even get turned on in the sexual sense, and orgasm, she replied overjoyed. I am the most advanced piece of technology on the planet. Maybe even the galaxy. Harry blushed brightly as his blushing sister and her best friend stared at him. You've been screwing her, haven't you? Accused Amy with a small glare. Well, actually she thought it was funny and brilliant and wondered whether Seraph could change her sex or whether Harry might make her a male one. Though, looking at how beautiful Seraph was, and how well she worked her weird outfit choice and hair dye, well, Amanda wouldn't turn her down as she was. Of course, he has, piped in Seraph with a dreamy expression. It feels so good when we're in bed together. You should try it. Ginny and Amy blushed brightly. I can't do that, replied Amy, rolling her eyes. He's my brother. Though, he's not Ginny's brother, so she can, she said, suddenly smirking at her blushing best friend. Harry groaned, burning red. Seraph, I told you to stop telling every girl you meet. Seraph smirked while sticking her tongue out as the elevator stopped and the doors opened into a huge lounge containing a few small tables and some leather couches. Come, follow me, she said, leading the way. Whoa, this place is awesome, giggled Amy, ridding her head of images of her brother having sex with his computer, or her for that matter. Not that he wasn't cute, but he was her twin. Though, thinking about it like that didn't make her want him any less. She glanced at her best friend, wondering whether her brother and Ginny would get together. She hoped so. Ginny could do with a nice boyfriend, and a rich one would just be an added bonus to her. Though, that naughty wrong part of her mind knew that Ginny wouldn't mind sharing Harry with her. Glad you like it, Harry grinned, oblivious to his sister's strange inner monologue. Welcome home, he chuckled amusedly as his two new roommates grinned. Harry, interrupted Seraph, startling him. I believe you're needed downstairs, she added, looking worried. It's a code red. However, there is also a police report of a code blue in Manchester. Harry groaned in annoyance. I can't deal with the code blue, he replied tiredly. But I'll take care of the code red. If the code blue is still in effect by the time I'm done, I'll deal with it. Okay, everything's prepared and ready for the go, she answered, nodding as Harry walked to the elevator. Wait. Amy suddenly called out in annoyance, halting Harry. What the heck's a code blue or code red? She demanded to know. Where are you going? He quickly thought as he moved closer to the door. It's just a business thing, don't worry, I'll be back later. Seraph will help you order some clothes and snacks and stuff that you might need. See you girls later. The elevator opened, and before either Ginny or Amanda could say or do anything, Harry had fled and the elevator took him away, leaving the three alone. Right, online shopping, said Seraph, eagerly giggling as two holographic window screens popped up in front of the two girls with names of many fashion shops. But where's Harry going? Amy asked, worried about him. She hoped it wasn't anything dangerous, though there was that part of her that knew it was dangerous. Don't worry, Seraph replied with a reassuring smile. It appears that the Fantastic Four were in the country for some sort of collaboration to do with quantum mechanics or something, so the code blue is being taken care of. Harry was supposed to be there, but I cancelled earlier. It kind of looks boring as I'm recording the event with a few delightfully bored young ladies that lost a bet with some of their colleagues in our videotech research department. Huh? They both asked in unison, but startled as their screens changed to show the image of two men, one blonde woman, and an orange rock thing that was probably a man wearing blue padded suits, though the rock guy only wore shorts. Seraph figured they would be more interested in superheroes than boring science stuff with some boringly arrogant scientists. The Fantastic Four, Seraph said with a grin. They are superheroes. Mr. Fantastic is elastic, the Human Torch can create and manipulate fire, the Invisible Woman creates force fields, and the Thing, well, he's strong. They all gained superpowers by exposure to some seriously freaky cosmic radiation while in space, and now they mostly deal with alien supervillains, which is a code yellow. But they deal with code blues, which are meta-human supervillains, or code greens, which are mutant supervillains. What the hell, cried out Amanda. You mean the magical world isn't the only crazy bunch of weirdos? she asked with wide eyes while Ginny's mouth was open in shock and awe as they watched as these people fought on the screen with crazy powers. Oh okay, so what's a mutant and metahuman? I'm at least smart enough to know what an alien is. It's still a shock looking at these pictures of some of them. Aliens of course you know are from other planets, Seraph began with a shrug and only Amy nodded. However, metahumans are normal human beings that have been exposed to something, typically some kind of radiation or gas, which unnaturally mutates their genes giving them superpowers like the Fantastic Four. However, mutants are a new stage of human evolution where they naturally gain special abilities that normally start showing up around the point of puberty, but not always, sometimes late, sometimes early. However, children born to mutants or metahumans are more unpredictable when it comes to awakening. Some can be awake from birth. Then what's a code red? Amy asked worriedly if Harry was worried about that more than criminals with superpowers. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to discuss Code Red, she answered with a shrug. Magical supervillains, Ginny whispered in shock, but Seraph didn't look surprised or bothered as Amy's eyes widened in horror. Voldemort? Amy whispered while Seraph shrugged. Harry is? She couldn't even bring herself to say the words as she worried. Seraph just placed her finger to her new friend's lips in a gesture for secrecy and laughed. I didn't tell you anything of the sort, so don't tell him you know anything. Though I'm sure he'll realize you know he won't bring it up if you don't. Amy and Ginny just looked at each other and silently agreed with a nod. It seemed almost too much for them to handle. CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 6. Magical. Harry returned home after kicking the crap out of a small army of douchebag mage. Groaning in exhaustion he stripped to his black boxers and slid into bed. He was just thankful that the Fantastic Four took care of the metahuman as he was too exhausted. Though, it made him remember that he was planning on being at that meeting, but Seraph had already informed them of not being able to attend, luckily as it looked so boring. It was a shame really as it had sounded like fun getting to meet the Four. He had gotten Seraph to invite Reed Richards and the rest of the Four to dinner tomorrow, but they had prior engagements unfortunately. Though, Harry supposed it was for the best as he really didn't want anyone else involved with his Code Red problems just yet. Though, he knew it was only a matter of time until others noticed and got involved. Harry hoped that he had most of the wizarding world in the UK under control and stable before then to stop jerks like S.H.I.E.L.D. from swooping in and trying to take over his operation, and doing a half-assed job about it. He could do a half-assed job of everything by himself, thank you very much. Today had been very tiring, but very interesting. Harry found a sister, and now she was sleeping peacefully in the next room. He smiled, at least he found someone worth his love and protection. It was just a shame she would be worrying about him as he was near certain that Seraph told them of his somewhat short career in the superhero business. Not that he minded them knowing as he was certain that the moment he did go out on a code other than Red, that would be out in the open, they would link the tech to him. Harry knew that the public would at first assume that the Cyber Knight was Iron Man, or Stark's new armor model, but after Stark denied it suspicion would be placed on his company. In the end Harry knew he would have to admit to being the Cyber Knight. He supposed it was not too bad, everyone thought Iron Man was cool. Wonderland had just finished some of the distortion field modifications, and that would be an ongoing operation to improve the field, so now no one of magic would be able to get past the lobby without authorization, and they would not be able to teleport in or out either. Though, Wonderland was fascinated with the whole magical shielding thing. They were lusting over the fireplace travel physics. That could revolutionize the planet and advance human technology by hundreds of years. It was quite fascinating, and Harry could only hope that they could potentially make it less sickly to travel, if they could reverse engineer the mathematical equations to what seemed to amount to planetary wormhole technology, or magic in this case. However, shaking that thought off as he didn't have the spare time to get into research mode himself, Harry had to wonder why the Death Eaters attacked twice in one day. He suspected the second attack, which was conveniently snake-faced bastard free, was to see whether the Knight would show up or not. Voldemort was probably hoping it was just luck for the Cyber Knight to turn up before. However, Voldemort's minions were not so lucky, as they got the shit beat out of them, and faced the slaughter. Harry hated the fact he had to kill them, but without the prison to keep them in it left him little choice, which was why he was now secretly creating a new supervillain prison himself, dubbed the Crater, as it was to be a half-sphere design underground. Well, it was almost fully built, but because of funding issues it was set aside, and CyberTech lawyers were already on the prowl to take control of finishing and running the prison. It would actually make CyberTech some money back, but it could also be used for marketing at a later date. It wasn't a great investment, it was barely a May investment, but those magical criminals needed a secure place to be kept off the streets and from having to accidentally die in the struggle to get away from being captured. It was a bit of a grey technicality, but sometimes it was a necessity. As long as nobody innocent was hurt in the process, Harry could live with that. Harry sighed as he closed his eyes, drifting off to sleep when a knock on his door disturbed him. Sighing, he called out, "Come in," and the door opened by itself. Amanda nervously walked in, the door closing itself behind her. She wore cute blue pajama and looked really sweet standing there looking nervous, though she looked like she had been crying. I can't sleep," she whispered sadly. I think it's only really just sank in," she continued looking down towards her small bare feet. I feel sick. They hurt my brother. And I don't want you to get hurt protecting me." "Shush, come here," he replied, sitting up revealing his muscular chest. Her eyes widened in horror noticing his many scars, though walked slowly to him. He pulled her caringly into his arms, pulling the covers back. She slid in and he covered them both, hugging his sister tightly as they lay, and she started silently sobbing into his chest. He stroked his fingers gently through her hair as her fingers pulled into his back, pulling him to her as tightly as she could, feeling his warm body. I don't ever want to lose you again," she cried in such pain it broke his heart. Harry kissed her head. "I won't ever leave you if you won't leave me, I promise with my heart and soul." "I promise I won't ever leave you," she replied with conviction, sniffling a little as she lightened her hold on him. Pulling back to look into his eyes, she smiled sadly with a few tears still in her eyes. She then leaned towards him and her lips touched his, gently kissing for a moment before pulling back. Amanda giggled a little at his befuddled expression as she snuggled back down into his chest and sighed in comfort. "Harry?" she whispered gently. Jem," he mumbled while cuddling her in return. She laughed a little with a hitch to her voice. "Be careful. I don't want to lose you now I have you." Harry kissed her on the top of her head. "I am the most careful man in the history of men. You lie so easily, so I don't think so," she said laughing as she pulled back from her brother and looked at him in the dark, then gave him one last kiss on the lips to express all of her pent-up frustrations and feelings before snuggling down. "Good night, Harry," she said with a laugh aimed at her brother. "Ginny's great, you know," she suddenly said through a yawn. "She is really sexy, got a nice ass, great boobs, and she's totally fun to hang out with." Harry chuckled while rolling his eyes in the dark. "It sounds more like you want her yourself," he replied in amusement. Amanda startled. "Harry," she complained, but it felt half-hearted. I love." She trailed off for several moments and Harry realized she wasn't going to continue. He laughed a little more as he squeezed her comfortingly, squishing her chest into his maw. "You'll find yourself," he replied. "I'll be here for you both no matter what your choice is. Happiness is better than pandering to idiots or fearing rejection. Being rejected is better than never knowing. Then you can move on and find happiness elsewhere." "Thanks, Harry," she answered with a soft sigh. We've been best friends for years, and we've done some things together, and hang out every day, and I love being with her all the time and you'll figure things out," Harry said gently as he felt his sister curl tighter into his side. The next morning after waking in a tangle, Harry and Amanda had a little, large hard, and embarrassing problem as Harry was having a glorious morning, which was pressing quite hard into his sister. Harry was just thankful Amanda saw the humor in it, and thankfully they were both wearing clothing that got in the way. But then he had to suffer her staring at the monster bulge as it was poking up through the firm elastic of his boxer shorts while teasing him. Which was added to as Seraph joined in the tease fest before promising not to bring it up again while she left his room and wiggled her tongue at him in tease before she left him alone. Sighing, Harry had to have a nice cold shower. Amanda might have been his twin sister, but she was still practically a stranger and her jammies were quite tight to her tight and beautiful body, and he was still only a young man. After Harry and Amanda arrived at the breakfast bar after dressing and ate a breakfast with Ginny, Harry was pretty sure by the endless teasing looks that Ginny and Amanda shared that he was sure Amanda had not kept to her "no telling embarrassing things" word she gave. Seraph took the girls to show them how to accomplish their new jobs, show them around. and introduced them to a few other scientists. While the girls were being shown around, Harry snuck off to his secret lab with plenty of work to accomplish to keep his promise to Amanda, and help stop Voldemort and Dumbledore. Harry was busy for the next month, and the weekend approached fast. He had gotten to know his sister and Ginny well in their spare time, and Ginny more while he was actually doing official work, as Amanda worked mainly from hers and Ginny's office while Ginny had to follow him all over the place. Amanda had been a little worried about her brother. He kept disappearing at the oddest moments. It bothered and worried her as she didn't want him to get hurt. She would be happier if she could watch to keep an eye on him. However, in happier news, she noted in the wizarding newspapers the Cyber Knight had been taking care of all the Death Eater attacks on Muggles. But what was annoying, the British Ministry had been condemning his actions as murder. Sure, he may be offing them, but it was a war, and in war both sides were supposed to suffer casualties, not just innocent people. However, it was lucky most of the wizarding civilians did not seem to care what the ministry said, as someone was taking care of the Death Eaters, even if it was violently. Amanda kind of agreed, as she knew that the Cyber Knight couldn't capture them for the corrupt ministry to let go hours later. Amanda was a little surprised none of the Order had come to try to take them back yet. It made her wonder what Dumbledore was up to. She knew he was still alive, unfortunately, since the papers would have reported his death if he passed. Ginny was beyond confused though. Her parents had not even tried to come and get her either, not that she would leave. She got to spend plenty of time with Harry. She also enjoyed her work. She got to see and even try loads of fun new stuff, and Amanda was really fun. They got to do whatever they wanted whenever they wanted. However, Ginny knew that the wonderful happy days would probably not last and wondered what Dumbledore was plotting. It was most likely some evil scheme he thought was the purest of goodness. Harry enjoyed a good laugh though when Amanda told him about the first prophecy where she was supposed to defeat Voldemort with some kind of power he knows not. Harry had no faith in a prophecy. It seemed quite lame really that the wizards were such weaklings they relied on a baby to rid them of Voldemort. They were both self-fulfilling, so as far as Harry was concerned, they were both ridiculous. It was a Sunday and Harry thought it would be useful to finally buy loads of books on magic, so they knew what they were up against, and because Wonderland wanted some more reading materials since they had gotten hold of a few things, it was deemed a good idea. Plus, if they could prove magic was a science, then they could potentially mix technology and science, potentially creating a technology that created mana which would create magic. Therefore, Amanda and Ginny took Harry to Diagon Alley where he changed some Muggle money into these interesting gold coins. Amanda and Ginny used magic to shrink all the bags of books that they had just bought. Neither Amanda nor Ginny could believe that they were walking out of the bookshop with a copy of every book they owned in their combined pockets. Amanda, Ginny. They were startled as their names were called and looked around to see their good friend Hermione Granger quickly hurrying over from across the cobblestone path. "Oh, hey Hermione," grinned Amanda, happy to see her after this past month without any contact. "What are you guys doing here?" she asked, blushing as her eyes drifted over Harry. "Just shopping for some books," replied Ginny, understating how many books. "So, what have you been doing?" Hermione asked in wonder. "Dumbledore's been driving us all crazy," she added, rolling her eyes. "They've been trying to apparate and portkey into CyberTech, but they keep bouncing back." Harry burst out laughing. "Ha, my distortion field's doing its job then. Did they not consider using the front door?" Hermione shrugged. "I don't think so," she agreed, wondering what a distortion field was, but decided to ask another day. "Dumbledore keeps going on about Amanda not being safe with you," she laughed. "I don't think his brain works right anymore. He says you're an enemy bent on revealing the magical world. Though, sometimes I've been tempted myself." They all laughed. "Yeah, if he can't get to us, what makes him think Voldemort can?" asked Amanda amusedly. "So, what are you doing here?" She continued to change the subject. Hermione rolled her eyes. "I've been ordered here to watch out for Death Eater attacks. Supposedly Snape said, since the Death Eaters keep getting slaughtered by the Cyber Knight." Her eyes flicked suspiciously to Harry here, but he pretended not to notice. "When they attack the Muggles, so they're going to attack Diagon Alley instead," she sighed, shaking her head. "The stupid old man and ministry are condemning the Cyber Knight as a murderer. However, the Muggler-borns and half-bloods just think of him as a soldier defending his people. Though most of the Muggler-borns are torn about whether he's the new Iron Man or a new crazy rich superhero. Well, I'm sure he's doing a fantastic job kicking ass," Harry interrupted as the three girls gave him a look, which caused him to chuckle nervously. So, if Dumbledore were imprisoned you would dance with joy, huh? Hermione just looked at him in hope. If you throw the Nutter in jail, I'll kiss your ass, she declared, causing Amanda and Ginny to burst out laughing. You best hurry up then, Harry, giggled Ginny. Hermione doesn't swear or be naughty much, if ever, so I figure she's serious. They were then interrupted from their conversation by many popping noises as about 40 Death Eaters appeared on the street. Harry quickly pushed the three girls out of the way, into the doorway of the bookshop as many panicked shoppers ran around screaming for their lives while the laughing Death Eaters began their attack. Looks like Snape was right, said Amanda, very worried as she watched her brother nervously as he looked to have just been about to sneak off. What the? Harry suddenly yelled out, pointing into the street, and the three girls foolishly looked but saw no threat and looked back to see him missing. I can't believe we fell for that, Hermione said in annoyance as she and the other two drew their wands, also looking annoyed. How long do you think it will take the Cyber Knight to show up and put a stop to this? I don't know, replied Amanda, looking around worriedly. Though, he always manages to get to the attack sites quite fast. He doesn't have Siren with him here. Suddenly Amanda's eyes widened in horror as a familiar green beam headed her way. She was frozen, frightened to the spot. She closed her eyes tight. It was the end. She was a goner. However, she did not feel it hit. Was she alive? On the other hand, maybe she was dead? In heaven? Everything had gone silent. Amanda opened her eyes, and they widened further at the sight. With his back to her stood a smoky silver and red armored warrior. She was odd as she had only ever seen pictured glimpses and artist renderings, but this was simply amazing. It was no wonder the Death Eaters were all so terrified of him. He made for an intimidating figure. She couldn't help but feel a little weak in the knees, and even a little aroused. The whole of Diagon Alley was at a standstill, all staring at the warrior in awe. The Death Eaters, even behind their masks, looked scared, shitting themselves even. Amanda could see them shaking and looking uncertain. Gone was the laughing and jeering at another's suffering, as they knew it would be their suffering next. The Cyber Knight reached down to the handles on the cannons down his legs and pulled them both up, facing the Death Eaters. Two red beams shot out powerfully and cut through the air and burnt into the Death Eater ranks with explosive force, taking out half in one shot. They screamed in terror as they burnt to death, as others screamed for help. He released the beam cannon's skirt and they lowered back into position. The Cyber Knight turned his head slightly so Amanda and friends could see his dark metal face. "Stay back," he said in a modulated voice before turning back to his enemy. Amanda gulped and slowly walked back, where Hermione and Ginny pulled her further into the doorway, snuggling into each other tightly to give him as much room as he could get. The Cyber Knight then blasted off with red energy bursting out of his engine wings, and pulled back his right arm as he hovered several feet above them. Punching it forward, a red curved blade whipped out, smashing down, slicing into 5 Death Eaters, and retracting. The Death Eaters started screaming more in fright and running for their lives as the Cyber Knight's blade soared towards them again, but while some had enough sense to apparate away, the others died bloody deaths. The Cyber Knight then glanced at Amanda before flying away at speed, creating a boom in the air and a red energy ring that slowly faded, but everyone's hands went to their ears because of the deafening noise. Amanda and friends just stayed together in the doorway, having just witnessed such an incredible, yet one-sided fight. It was a surprise that the Death Eaters still wanted to follow Voldemort rather than cry hiding under their beds. Amanda, Ginny, Hermione, Harry suddenly interrupted, smiling a little as he now stood before them in the doorway while panting for breath. "Are you girls okay?" "Harry, you idiot," Amanda yelled angrily as she glomped into his welcoming arms and cried into his chest. "Why do I have to find such an irresponsible, selfless brother?" He chuckled and kissed her forehead lovingly. "I guess this truly means that nobody is perfect?" She pulled back but still held him. "Shut up or I am so kicking your ass," she growled playfully with tears running down her cheeks. Harry laughed and pulled her back into a hug and gestured for Ginny to join them, and she was quick too. "You know, Dumbledore will be here soon," Hermione said, quickly interrupting the sweet scene and causing them all to pull back with sour expressions. "You should leave before you have to beat up Dumbledore and the Order too." CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 7. Code Reds. The next evening Ginny and Amy were still talking Harry to death about how cool the Cyber Knight was when he saved Harry's sister at Diagon Alley the day before. Harry was finding it a little disturbing as he knew they knew, and they knew he knew they knew, and yet they were talking about the Cyber Knight in hero worship. Though some of the naughty things the girls would like to do with him made Harry realize that Amy and Ginny were evil masterminds in the tease department. However, Harry had other concerns than his beautiful sister and her beautiful best friend wanting him to know that they were funny. That morning Seraph had reported an attempted hack into his satellite systems from the United States, and it didn't take long for it to be tracked back to Stark Industries. Harry had been quite pissed as he decided on the upfront approach and video called Stark. The man had supposedly not realized that the satellite he was trying to borrow was not a public sector communications satellite, and even had the cheek to ask whether he could borrow that one and a couple more. Well, Harry wasn't stupid, so he wasn't going to just allow that without reason. He was informed that the Avengers suspected some code blues were really covered up code reds within the UK. Harry was pretty pissed Stark knew more about sorcerers than he did until recently. Stark then went and brought up S.H.I.E.L.D. giving them the info for them to investigate, but they didn't have enough satellites in their grid to pick up magic. Harry was quick to think on his feet and said if they send over their information that he'll investigate the matter and keep them informed. He had known it was only a matter of time until others noticed, and he knew to save a lot of innocent people from the magical world, he had to stall for as long as he could, to at least stop S.H.I.E.L.D.'s involvement. Stark had seemed skeptical, but he ended up reluctantly agreeing as he had little choice. From the new information he was given, Harry realized it was a metahuman that gave S.H.I.E.L.D. the information. It seemed that Voldemort had been hunting non-mage with superpowers in his spare time. It was believed he, meaning Voldemort, as they had not yet gotten a name, was trying to use magic to discover the key to meta powers, or replicate them somehow. That's all the world needed, that dickhead with even more power. Though, from what Harry knew of the magical dickheads, that it was unlikely that Voldemort or any of his pathetic followers knew anything about genetics, so all that left them with was potentially figuring out the science behind their powers. Which would be impossible for a bunch of primitives who thought magic was as magical as they did. Harry was pretty certain there was more to magic than the mumbo-jumbo they taught and learnt. It was only a matter of time until someone somewhere who knew what they were doing discovered the secrets of magical shit. Amy and Ginny did not appreciate Harry calling it magical shit. They may have been proud traitors to their magical idiots, but they were still proud witches with adorable scowls. Wondering at the force of giants at Voldemort's command, Harry was curious as to what he offered them to fight for him. Maybe they would take a better offer. Though, that was unlikely according to the few books on giants they now had. They hated humans like them. The light as it was weren't very good at keeping to their deals. Harry prided himself on keeping to an agreement if it was possible, and he would have kept to a deal with the giants, even if he had to move a mountain or something. The giants could be useful members of society if properly educated in fields they would be able to comprehend. Though, Harry was not too sure about them as they were huge and very powerful from what Amy and Ginny were saying, and the books didn't dispute that. Harry doubted even Siren would stand much of a chance by herself if their armored skin was that thick. He guessed together they might be able to take one, but multiple giants seemed like an impossible task, unless, perhaps if he had some more mech with him? Or the Hulk in a raging temper tantrum, he thought with a silent chuckle. Another problem other than Voldemort and his arse-nibblers, Albus Dumbledore and his Order of the Phoenix. They were no doubt going to end up getting in the way of Harry's lackluster plans. He had already determined that the majority of them didn't give a shit about the Muggles as they called them. They may have to incarcerate the whole lot of them in the crater as the last of the construction was steadily nearing its completion. It was still surprising that the Order had not turned up trying to get Amy back. From what Harry could tell, Dumbledore would do nearly anything to retain control over Harry's sister. Though Harry also knew he would do everything and anything to stop the old man in his tracks. The Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. were already getting nosy, and it was only a matter of time before Harry had to deal with them well again. Harry knew Dumbledore wanted his sister because of these bloody prophecies. Harry didn't much like either, but Dumbledore was pushing for the first even though he would never let Amy fight. He didn't want the magical world revealed. It was just a shame that if he had to, Harry would without a second thought, no hesitation. In fact, Harry was already running plans through simulations through the Seraph network. It seemed to Harry that Dumbledore had completely lost the plot. The first prophecy mentioned some bull about a power he knew not, yet Amy had never had an opportunity to use any such hidden power. Harry had only laughed when Amy had told him what Dumbledore had said the power was, love. Love? That's not a power, it's an emotion. Dumbledore be crazy yo. Harry knew that emotions were the catalyst to controlling magic, but without spells to go with them they were just uncontrolled nothing burgers. The fact was only negative emotions such as fear, hate, anger, etc. seemed to have any real provenance of preforming magic without any control. Harry figured it would take controlling every one of your emotions to be able to perform all forms of magic without a focus. However, the maze would still need to cast, which meant spells, which brought Harry back to Dumbledore being an idiot who just enjoyed being the leader of the light, and having near everyone worshipping him. These magical people weren't only openly gullible fools but extremely weak of mind, body, and magic too. He saw the way not one person in Diagon Alley drew their wands to defend themselves or their families, except for Amy and her friends. They all had powers and a high probability of getting hurt or dying anyway, so why not fight back? It made little sense. Were they groomed to submit to this bullshit? Taught by Dumbledore? Harry figured it could only be that it was Dumbledore's influence. The fact that they feared Voldemort's name, which seemed odd, it was like Dumbledore and the Ministry wanted their people to be afraid of fighting back. Perhaps because they knew that if they did the Death Eaters would lose as they were nothing special, and in most cases, Harry noted that they were cowards and weak. They were fodder. The wizarding people were so thick that they ran around screaming, expecting to be saved. They were such cowards that knew they were going to die anyway, yet they didn't just stand there and take it or fight but cried. It was a wonder they had stayed hidden from the scientific world for so long. Though, the scientific people really weren't looking, or they might have found them. These people were backwards and had an aversion to technology. Amy had said that electronics weren't supposed to work within the wards, but Harry's armor and phone worked fine. He had to wonder whether the magical world forbid technology because they wanted to keep their mundane, outdated traditions and technology would bring about change and new ideas, or whether technology had just outright outgrown the magical interference. It would trample on pure-blood ideals either way. Yes, Harry had taken notice that the pure-blood mage had all the power through birthright even if they didn't have the magic, brains, or potential. He had not done much research, well he delegated it to some geneticists, but he had done a little, well, his staff had, and found that most purebloods had been inbreeding to keep the magic pure. However, it seemed they were complete morons, probably from inbreeding, because it would do the opposite. It was like if sisters, brothers, cousins interbred over long periods of time their genetics began to weaken and break down. Though in this scientific age unborn children could be genetically altered slightly to prevent this, it had been going on for so long that their bloodlines would start losing their magic if they didn't start breeding with non-mage preferably, or non-mage born mage if they had to be that fussy and racist. It seemed Harry's company needed to start buying into the magical world and placing in technological upgrades here and there. He would start with the entrance between science and magic, the leaky cauldron. It was a good business opportunity to branch out into a community that had never had any real advancement before. It seemed to him that the non-mage born and half-blood mage outnumbered the purebloods, and if Harry was right, outpowered them too. That meant they were a ripe opportunity for change before Dumbledore let the Death Eaters kill them all. The thought made Harry hold in a growl, as it could almost be like a secret culling of those who outnumbered them before Dumbledore let someone stop them with kid gloves where they would all get away with murder. Harry supposed it may have taken another 100 years or so until the purebloods, what was left of them, if the Mugglerborns were left alone, realized how inferior they made themselves because of their prejudice. However, none of that was really his main thoughts right then. Harry had gotten to know Ginny very well and thought he might be developing feelings towards her, but maybe they were more sisterly. She was cute, beautiful, and was just all around fit and fun to spend time with. He also noticed the way she and Amy were closer than he thought friends would be. However, he had only really cared for Seraph in that way, and she was a computer, just artificial life, something or someone he created because he was useless around most people and was lonely. That was kind of sad. Harry let his mind wander to thoughts of the two girls before him. Harry's eyes wandered, taking in their plump lips as they gave him little mocking grins. Ginny's brown eyes sparkled just as much happiness as Amy's green. He sighed in frustration. I need to get out more, he muttered in his own head. Maybe get laid, he finished as his eyes drifted to Ginny before he shook his head clear. Harry watched Ginny alone for a second, smiling at her cute freckled face, blushing when she noticed him staring and beamed at him with that gorgeous smile of hers. He looked away embarrassed towards his sister. Amy giggled at her embarrassed brother, sticking her little pink tongue out childishly, and then blowing him a kiss. The two girls giggled as his blush increased, and he looked down. He gulped, not knowing where to look, so he looked down at his hands on his lap. The two girls grinned back impishly, both giggling, and gave him a wink. Harry winced back nervously, blushing deeply, while they gave him a cheeky grin each and continued with their conversation about the Cyber Knight as if they did nothing peculiar at all. They really got off on making fun of him. Harry should have insisted on bringing their other friend home with them. She seemed like a more reasonable person, who was a fan, so that was a plus. Maybe she would have stopped her friends, or joined in. Harry wished they would at least stop talking about the Cyber Knight as if they're clueless. If they keep doing this all the time, he was just going to have to ask them not to and stop playing the silly game. It had been a few hours later, after a movie. They watched some CGI film that Harry hadn't paid too much care about, but both girls had been amusingly fascinated. It was quite fun getting to tease them a little, as they were like that no matter what films or shows they watched. Harry sighed tiredly in his room as he stripped down until he only wore his black boxer shorts. He sighed again as he sat on the edge of his bed, his thoughts wandering briefly to the two beautiful young women in rooms near his, wondering whether they were sharing a bed together tonight. Harry took a deep breath and lifted his left arm, looking at the intricately designed gauntlet that housed his cybertronic powers, and gently stroked its matte black screen with the fingers of his right hand, wondering when he would have to fight again. The screen lit up with multicolored holograms with the CyberTech logo before he looked away and took his hand from the screen and rested into his pillow. "Yeah, Crim, me too," he replied as he heard a whispered contact like a blurring sound of machine code through his head and translated through his mind. Harry felt the gentle tingle through his body as he heard or felt that voice again whispering through him. "No, girl. Seriously," he said with a laugh. "Okay, I'll think about it, but I'll need to update your mainframe," he said, waiting as she spoke more. "Yes, it is going to take a while if I can get this working. You're a part of the prototype system. With some future upgrades you'll get." "What do you mean Crimson is a boy's name?" Rolling his eyes, Harry groaned. "Okay," he replied thoughtfully. "Give yourself a name," he suggested reasonably. No. I can't call you that." "Who the hell taught you?" "Seraph," Harry called in annoyance. Yes," she replied slowly as a holographic monitor up against the side wall lit up with her smiling sheepishly from within. "Have you been giving your little sister weird name ideas?" "No." "So, she tried to get me to rename her, sexy bitch?" I was teaching her to joke," she defended herself defiantly. "Just don't," he replied with a tired sigh. "Her Apu is extremely primitive. She cannot comprehend joking." "Well, Crimson is a boyish name," Seraph said while smirking as the screen disappeared. "Well, how about we stick to a theme of red, okay?" he asked and got an affirmative. "How about Ruby or Carmine?" I guess the shade of red does have that metallic sheen of Carmine," Harry agreed thoughtfully. "Sure, override name change, Carmine, accept," Harry said, and his gauntlet bleeped several times as the screen lit up again and sped through menus. "There, now you have a name you like. And I can cutely shorten it to Cammy." "Yes, I know it's not really any shorter, but it's easy to say." And Harry paused as he listened. "Oh, so you were trying humor but didn't get your own joke. Try not to push your Apu too far. You'll get some better upgrades as we upgrade the Justice Project armor, okay?" Harry smiled as he listened to her chattering. He didn't have to speak with her out loud as she showed him AR, augmented reality, images that looked similar to transparent holograms as she happily, or as happy as she could push her processors into getting, showed him some of the battle data she had been analyzing with her stats. Harry hoped he didn't have to use his powers anytime soon. Those blasted Death Eaters did not seem to know when to give up, and he didn't want to push Carmine too far too fast and damage her or the armor. Harry considered the Death Eaters' mentality towards the outside world. It just showed they knew nothing. They thought magic and the old ways superior to advancements in science. Such hatred just created more hatred and lack of understanding. They considered the non-magical people a threat, or they would not have to attack them. However, Harry was also concerned about the rest of the magical community. They modified the non-magical people's memories of ever being attacked by magic and gave them no chance of defending themselves against another attack. That really crept him out. Harry would make any memory-altering spells, charms, or potions illegal and punishable by life in jail. Harry sighed. It was just a good job that Captain Britain was around to deal with any code blues or greens. That man was creepily into being a superhero. Luckily, he wasn't a complete idiot, just naive, so he agreed that any code reds he came across he would chase them off, as he didn't have it in him to kill. He at least understood why Harry was keeping it all secret for the time being. Luckily Harry had people for dealing with Captain Britain and didn't have to speak with the corny guy himself. Just thinking about that made Harry shiver. He took superhero work too seriously, like an 80s comic book cartoon character. It was weird. It was bad enough having to fight all the code reds himself without any more on his plate, and Harry was not ready for the world to discover his Justice Project yet. Though at this rate the Prime Minister would have to learn of it. The Prime Minister was already curious as to why CyberTech bought out the new prison to complete. Harry sighed again. No use worrying why idiots do the things they do, just knowing they do them will give you a headache. He chuckled lightly to himself, shaking his head clear of that stupid thought. He ran his fingers once more over his gauntlet with a smile. At least he was around to slap some sense into the fools with the help of his sexy bitch. Yes, that was a joke, Carmen, he said with a soft chuckle as he heard and felt her query. With one last sigh Harry stood, pulling his covers back. He slid into his warm bed, snuggling under his covers. He closed his eyes, content to drift off into better thoughts in the land of Nod. Just as Harry felt the Sandman's presence, he started at a knock on his door. His eyes snapped open with a soft groan. Sitting up, the covers slid around his waist, as he looked towards the door. "Come in," he called with a stifled yawn. The door automatically slid open. Harry was only mildly surprised to see Amy and Ginny sticking their heads in, grinning impishly. "Hello, darling brother," his sister giggled slyly. "Can we come in?" she asked in hope, but she pulled Ginny in anyway and the door slid closed behind them. Harry raised his eyebrows in question. "You ladies wanted something?" he asked curiously. "We couldn't sleep," Amy said while gesturing to her white PJs and Ginny's blue as Ginny shyly hid half behind her, which was strange as he had seen her plenty in her pajamas. "Okay, do you want some hot chocolate or?" "No," Amy said quickly as he was about to climb out of bed, as the bedside lamps flickered on at a gesture, which brightened the room and showed the girls Harry's powerful bare chest and abs. Can we, sleep here tonight?" Suddenly the three jumped in shock and confusion as if hit by lightning as Amy was interrupted before she could continue. The room was flashing with a deep red light, and loud sirens screeched throughout the building. "Intruder alert! Intruder alert!" Seraph's voice called calmly through the building-wide communication grid and overpowering the sound of the alarm. "The main lobby is being breached by unknown hostiles. This is not a drill, we are under attack. All security personnel to ground floor, detain and control the threat. They have come with intent of violence for as of yet undetermined reasons. This is a code red. CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 8. Invasion Orders. Intruder alert! Intruder alert!" Seraph's voice called calmly through the building-wide communication grid. "The main lobby is being breached by unknown hostiles. This is not a drill, we are under attack. All security personnel to the ground floor, detain and control the threat. They have come with intent of violence for as of yet undetermined reasons. This is a code red." Harry immediately flung himself out of bed past Ginny and Amy. "Seraph on screen," he demanded as the girls followed him, now knowing with 100% certainty what a code red was, and worried someone would get hurt. Suddenly a holographic screen appeared before Harry's eyes while he stroked the gauntlet on his arm. The screen was showing the lobby in crystal clarity as Harry pulled on his black trousers. He looked at the screen, barely registering Ginny and Amy looking around his shoulders, as he stood a fair bit taller than them. What they saw caused all three to gasp in shock, horror, and rage. Dumbledore with other members of the Order of the Phoenix were firing curses and hexes at Harry's security, as the guards returned fire with cream-colored plastic guns, shooting green energy, stun bolts. They noted that along with Dumbledore, Amy and Harry's parents, as well Ginny's mum, and her brother Ron was a man they knew as Mad-Eye Moody, an ex-Auror for the Ministry of Magic, and quite a few others Harry had no intelligence on because they were likely nobodies. And it was difficult to obtain information on a whole civilization of people who didn't have a computer network of any kind of use, as they had magical things that came close, but then they never cared to improve upon what others had started because they were happy not exploring their own possibility. They had so much potential that they wasted and squandered to sit in a corner and go stale. It was terribly sad. They still kept designing broomsticks to fly on, while non-magicals had built monstrous flying machines that could carry hundreds of people at once. Harry sighed as he took a guess that a few more Order members were auras, as they didn't seem too bad with the spells they fired, but right then, Harry was fuming with rage as he spotted several of his reception staff unconscious and bleeding. What right did the magical world have to attack a non-magical building? None, that's what, and he would not let it continue for much longer. What the fuck do they think they're doing? Demanded Amy angrily. Are they trying to start another war? I don't know, but it looks that way, commented Harry, calmer than Amy and Ginny could tell he was. They could feel his magic flaring with his anger, and Amy figured she and Ginny should probably give him some kind of training to get that under control, even if he had no real desire to become a mage. The two girls could predict something blowing up with his accidental magic soon if he did not calm down, not that they would blame him. But that was reason enough for him to learn some control. It was probably a miracle he had never discovered his power before. Seraph, are there any more outside? Harry demanded, his eyes blazing pure fury. He did not need this. If Stark or S.H.I.E.L.D. got hold of this, he would have to deal with them getting in his way, as they would both want in on the fun before it was over. Affirmative, she agreed as another screen popped into existence next to the lobby one showing outside the main entrance. Harry noted the main doors were somehow ripped to pieces, but that could be repaired with improved locks. The annoying thing was that the doors weren't locked. The building was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including Christmas and all other holidays. They smashed down an open door, Harry grumbled in frustration. What idiot doesn't check the door first? It's a public lobby of a building that obviously still had people working within. The fucking lights were on with people inside, and the welcome sign lit up. And they broke the bloody thing, he said sadly. Amy gave Harry a sad look and took his hand, giving it a squeeze of support. Harry looked at her sharply in surprise. Yeah, he said with a scowl as he squeezed her hand back and returned his attention to the screens. It was quite dark outside as it was only 1 o'clock in the morning. Harry noted cars and other vehicles passing without a glance at what was happening around the building. He figured they put up charms to stop anyone noticing the attack, which was good as it meant no one would have to know. They should be able to keep it under wraps. His first massive cover-up. Harry was excited at having such a massive secret from S.H.I.E.L.D. and the government. It was just going to get harder to keep it secret from then on. Harry almost smiled at the looks of frustration of those in the building. They had not counted on such powerful resistance, or being outnumbered by real soldiers. Not that it mattered if they got past, they would never find their way any further than the lobby, in which case the automated defense grid might find them a risk to the safety of the building and tech within and kill them all. Outside stood around 30 more witches and wizards waiting under the entrance lights, a few of those lights flickering, in danger of going out because of damage caused to them. Harry saw Sirius Black, apparently his and Amy's godfather, standing to the side of the large group with Hermione, Mr. Weasley and the Weasley twins, to Ginny's relief looking uncertain, as if they very much did not want to be there, and wished they stayed at home. Harry growled as he saw some kind of silver light burst from Dumbledore's wand and shoot out of the doors, and as soon as those outside saw it they rushed in to assist in the battle. Harry was glad Mr. Weasley stayed put with the twins, Sirius and Hermione. At least they were not idiots with a death wish. The twins were apparently funny. Harry would rather meet them outside of all this stupidity. You two, Harry turned to the girls. Quickly go and get dressed and meet me in the lounge. The two girls nodded worriedly, wondering what Harry was planning as they rushed from the room, leaving Harry to watch the battle as more guards arrived on the scene to back up their fellow guards. Harry sighed, shaking his head in disgust as he grabbed his shirt, throwing it on, quickly buttoning. He slipped some black socks on, then his black boots, quickly buckling them. He exited his room, screens following him, finding Ginny and Amy staggering out of their rooms tying laces, both wearing blue trousers, tops and hoodies with white trainers, as if of one mind, even though they were different brands. What do we do? The girls both asked together, looking freaked out by what they saw on the screens. Follow me, he answered as he headed for the open elevator door. They obliged nervously. We'll stop them, don't worry, he added as they stepped into the elevator. He shot them a reassuring grin. They sighed in relief as the door closed, confident in him. The elevator began its descent into madness. Seraph, engage internal defense systems, Harry demanded coolly. Affirmative. She replied in a monotone. Suddenly the red light stopped flashing as the siren shut off. Harry noted the wizards and witches looked confused. The alarms shut down while the guards were very much aware what it meant, especially when the red lights stayed on. Building's offensive-defensive systems have been engaged. Seraph called throughout the building. The guards in the lobby stopped returning fire with the wizards and witches, staying hidden behind shields and desks, and still as the magic kept coming. Then the Order of the Phoenix stopped flinging magic with looks of confusion and concern at the fact the guards ceased fire. Then it happened. The lower ceiling areas of the cavernous lobby opened within CyberTech logos like metal irises, and out flew a mass of white and red elongated discs things, thinner at the front with twin propeller bays sliding out either side of the main discs with angled cannon bays and automatic railguns under the wings. There was about 30 of them hovering before the irises closed behind them. However, that was confusing. It was horrifying when they heard the clanking of metal and looked around to see some kind of blue alloy clicking down over the windows and doors, securing the building. "What the hell are those things supposed to do?" demanded a laughing ginger-haired man, Ginny's youngest brother, Ronald Weasley. "You muggle losers think you can scare us?" He laughed as he fired a bright blue light from his stick at one of the nearest drone. The spell hadn't reached it when one of the multiple barrels flashed blue and a laser-like beam of blue shot out, cutting through Ron's spell, slicing it into nothing and slashing across Ron's chest. The boy screamed out in agony as he was thrown back, skidding across the floor with blood splattering across his chest. He came to a stop, whimpering, gasping and holding his bloody chest through his charred robes, looking at the thing in horror. "I suggest you drop your wands," an angry yet familiar voice suddenly commanded over the internal comms network. "These devices have 3 power settings, and Ronald Weasley has just taken a hit on the first setting. I assure you, settings 2 and 3 are not as nice." The anger could be sensed in the voice, and most of the Order felt compelled to obey. Any sane person would, face to face with deadly things. However, at the shake of their leader Dumbledore's head, they did not relinquish their weapons but stood fast, eyeing the weapons with sweating caution. Hearts beating so fast that was all they could hear over the near quiet, as the drones made a soft humming noise from the propellers. Dumbledore stood up tall in the midst of the hall, and the chaos he and his Order caused the Muggles still quite shocked. This building was so powerfully secure. He thought he would have an easier chance of breaking into Azkaban Wizarding Prison and escaping with all the prisoners than breaking into here. The old man steadied his breathing as his eyes scanned the hall, looking for the source of the voice. However, it sounded as if it was everywhere, like the female alert warning, therefore guessed it was through some kind of Muggle communication system. "Mr. Pot," he began to say, wondering whether he could hear him, then remembered the young man was already furious and this time had much better weapons, so thought it best not to provoke him into firing. "Mr. Avalon," he decided to say instead. "We've come to retrieve Miss Potter. You have no right to keep her from us. She belongs to the magical world," he announced feebly. Suddenly up ahead an elevator opened and said young man walked out, chuckling though without much humor, followed by said girl looking nervous along with her best friend, Ginevra. Harry then stopped his mock laugh and sighed tiredly and with an annoyance that promised death. "You are not getting my sister, and that's final. When will you get it through that thick skull of yours?" "Hey, don't you speak to Albus Dumbledore like that," demanded James Potter suddenly before yelping as a blue beam scorched the floor by his feet, and caused him to gulp and take half a step back as he looked at Ron as his mother was tending to him. It looked like it hurt a lot. He was just glad the green beams from the Muggle guns stunned and not killed because he was hit earlier. Harry just stared coldly at the old man, his emerald eyes more like ice. "Tell your marionette to mind his manners or my computer may take offense and kill him," he spoke frosty. "As I was saying, my twin sister goes where she wants to. She is not property. She is a human being and you will never lay your filthy hands on her again, you pathetic little old man. So, I suggest you get out of my sight before I decide to capture you all and dump you in a cell. Or better yet, perhaps I'll make your nightmares come true, and I'll reveal all of you pathetic morons to the world." Dumbledore staggered backwards, the blood draining from his face, gulping. You can't do that, it would be murder. You don't have that kind of power anyway." Harry snorted, though with no humor. "I have you trapped. One word from me, or a hostile action from you and the drones will fire," he informed them innocently, though it would have made them all feel calmer if he said it with deadly intent, as he slowly and methodically took a few steps forward. "I have Death Eaters murdering innocent people on file, And all of this is being recorded.
What makes you so sure I don't have that power?
1 second is all it will take and my computer will hack every broadcast on this planet. She'll reveal all of you worldwide. Then she'll give them every large magical location and settlement on the planet. You'll never be able to hide again, everyone will know.
And you'll be screwed.
Those of magic shivered at his daring tone, as if he would love nothing more or less. The wizards and witches stood looking sick to their stomachs,
unable to comprehend the whole world finding out.
The CyberTech security guards stood, helping injured colleagues up and shooting their foes smug glares, though they weren't sure whether their boss was bluffing or not. Most figured that would cause more grief and problems than solve them. Though, the wizards and witches did not know Harry like his staff did, and all they could see was pure intent and capability.
Now, I'll give you a choice, Harry continued. An option.
But first I would like to congratulate you on telling Voldemort where my sister is. Aren't you the grand idiots today? He chuckled darkly as the wizards and witches gulped, realizing Voldemort might find out about this. However, some like Mad Eye Moody realized that if Death Eaters did know, those drones would take them out in no time, which allowed them at least an internal smirk.
However, your options are as followed. I make the magical world crumble. Or you get lost, and never darken my door again unless you have legitimate business, except Dumbledore or any greasy bastard that carries the dark mark. He glared at said men and they cringed back. You can't do this. Suddenly Lily Potter yelled angrily. She's my daughter, you'll give her back now. She's her own person, replied Harry nonchalant with a shrug as he gestured to his sister. I'm staying with my brother, answered Amy before anyone could ask. You committed an atrocity against me and my brother on that bastard old man's orders, Mrs. Potter. She glared hard and her mother cringed back at the rage and formal title her daughter used to address her. Amy felt like just pulling out her wand and launching a barrage of curses their way herself, or seeing whether Seraph will obey her order to blast them all into pieces with the drones. She wondered what other weapons protected them and could not wait to find out. She wondered what Ginny's dad would have been like seeing such tech. She could only guess at the antics he would cause to stay and have a look around. But Mississippi Potter, Dumbledore tried once more, sounding braver than he felt. This mission did not go down the way he hoped. In fact, it went down more the way Hermione Granger and Colin Creevey said it would, with them getting served a humiliating defeat. That was the main reason he guessed Hermione did not come in and Colin just stayed at home. Sirius was obviously waiting outside to laugh at them and gloat over their failure, probably with the twins, the three believing Hermione's forecast on the attack, not that they wanted anything to do with it anyway. And Mr. Weasley having faith in Muggle technology, and the love of his daughter, and not wanting to risk losing her by doing something stupid. That's Miss Avalon, she replied angrily, glaring. Harry smirked as they just started in open-mouthed shock, and it always felt good that she chose him. Dumbledore, however, had a completely different reaction to her name change, one of horror and an almost unwillingness to accept facts. But Mississippi, Avalon. Well, what about the prophecy? He stuttered, using the new name to not further anger the young woman. That old man is your problem, not hers. Go kill Voldemort, hissed Harry, most of the wizards flinching, and gasped. Yourself, he continued with narrowed, glaring emerald green eyes. But. The old man stuttered, unable to think, his mind clogged with incoherence. One last chance to leave, and Amy looks really pissed. One word from her and Seraph will most likely choose to fire, he commented with an evil grin, which Amy mirrored in her anger. The order gulped as one. Then how do we get out? Said Dumbledore, stumbling over his words in panic, gesturing the shattered door. Suddenly, as if to answer, the armor lifted, just enough to let them out. Oh, and before you leave. The door wasn't locked, Harry said angrily, and took pleasure that the wizards looked embarrassed. Told you the doors weren't locked, Mad Eye Moody grumbled towards Dumbledore as he turned and began walking out. We will also be expecting compensation for the damage you caused, said Harry, smirking darkly. Oh, and lift whatever charm is hiding this building, and don't expect to be able to attack us like this again. Now leave, he demanded the last, angrily, darkly and Sub-Zero, cold, all in one. The order jumped and began to make a hasty exit, following Moody's retreat, with Mrs. Potter being comforted quietly, as she sobbed in her husband's arms as they exited. Ginny, let's go. Harry sighed at Mrs. Weasley's demand as she stood by the exit while holding Ron, the last to leave except Dumbledore, who now looked really worried again. Ginny shook her head in defiance. "No Mum, I like living here, and I have a job I think I'm getting better at. I actually have a life here. My own life. Not whatever crap you want for me. I'm my own person. I'm an adult. You don't control my life anymore." "What?" roared Ron, stupidly enraged and forgetting about his injury. "Get over here now." Ginny suddenly switched from nervousness to red with pure venomous rage, and intent to cause death with just that look. "Get stuffed, Ronald, you flipping prat!" she screamed, and Amy and Harry nervously took a few steps from her, gulping. Ginny then looked around and saw the nearest angry guard, stormed over to her and snatched her gun, aiming it at her brother. "Now get lost," she demanded, firing. The green bolt launched, hitting the shield next to her brother's head. Ron gulped, wide-eyed with fear. Then Ron's rage returned to match Ginny's and raised his wand. "You stupid muggle wannabe bitch," he roared angrily. "How dare you use that muggle crap against me? You're coming home even if I have to drag you. You're not staying here with these muggle freak." Ginny's eyes flashed if at all possible, with even more rage as she glanced at the gun she held. She smirked upon noticing a very nice-looking switch. She flicked the switch, and then fired. This time a red bolt hit the shield beside Ron's head. The boy flinched, wondering why the color changed, but she told him. "Green for stun. Red for blowing holes through things," she commented, causing Ron's face to drain of blood. "I'm flipping sick and tired of you telling me what I can and can't do," she grinned evilly. "Threatening any boy that comes too close to me, thinking I'll just jump into bed with them all because you're a filthy-minded bastard." She suddenly laughed insanely and everyone in the lobby cringed back. This was not a girl you wanted to upset. "Maybe you should have been trying to keep me and Amy apart," she laughed insanely some more as her mother's and brother's faces paled dramatically. "That's right. While you were worrying about some boy taking my innocence because you're bastards, I gave it to a girl. When I was 13, she cackled crazily like one of those evil witches from TV. Somebody needed to lay off the sweets." Amy was now radiating so much heat off her bright red embarrassed face, Harry could literally feel it blasting off her in waves. He wondered whether that was a magical thing before he realized he didn't care. That was not in his field of study. Harry groaned, rubbing his tired eyes and shaking his head while Ginny's eyes suddenly darted open on realizing what she admitted. The lobby was now a wave of embarrassed silence until a flash of white light in the middle of the huge lobby and Seraph appeared, shocking Dumbledore. Mrs. Weasley and Ron out of their shocked silence slightly as the very angry-looking girl stormed over, literally as she was almost flying, in Ron's direction. "You bastard," she whispered, deathly quiet, but all heard as she landed flat in front of Ronald, and they cringed as she smacked him in the face, his head catapulting back, slamming into the shield, crying out as he fell to the floor, tears in his eyes, blood now dripping down his face as well as from his chest. Seraph then grabbed Ronald by his hair and with effortless force flung him through the gap in the shield. "When my friends demand you leave or face my wrath, especially while within my domain," she shouted angrily out to him as he cowered on the ground outside. Seraph then turned and glared at Mrs. Weasley, and the redhead mother quickly rushed out of the building, taking the hint. Then one look at Dumbledore and he nodded, walking towards the exit. He wondered what kind of technology this place had and guessed they must have some kind of advanced teleportation device for this girl to just appear like that. It was a shame he would have to crush this place as he could not have them becoming superior to magic. Seraph then noted a weird gleam in the old man's eyes. Suddenly, to her mild surprise, Dumbledore grabbed her around the neck, poking his wand tip into her face, and if she were human would have cried out in pain and whimpered, but she was not, so she didn't. Dumbledore now smirked smugly at Harry and his surprised staff. "Miss Potter will come with us if you want this girl to live," he informed them calmly and desperately. "That's Miss Avalon," laughed Amy suddenly as she knew enough about Seraph to know Dumbledore was not going to like the outcome from this encounter. In fact, Dumbledore noticed everyone was now laughing at him, including the girl he held captive, which did not seem right. What did they know that he did not? Plus, shouldn't the girl be finding it hard to breathe since his arm was on her windpipe? "What's so funny?" he demanded, slightly panicked now. "This is serious. I'll kill her." "She's not human, idiot," chuckled Harry amusedly. "She's not actually here. That's just her holographic avatar," he elaborated for the old man's confusion. "Yep, so I can do this,"
She giggled as she phased through his hold, making him stumble back with a look of pure horror on his face as the girl who apparently wasn't real turned and grinned at him. Seraph's fist then struck Dumbledore's gut with abnormal strength and he doubled over with a yelp of agony. Then she grabbed his beard. "Stay away from me. Oh, and brush your teeth, your breath smells like unwashed cock," she smirked as his eyes went wide with fear and shock, then dragged him to the exit and effortlessly tossed him through the gap in the shield where he crashed to the ground outside. The exit then closed, blocking the loitering wizards and witches from sight as they gaped. "Well, that was certainly interesting," commented Harry with a deep sigh, rubbing the back of his head. He sighed again as he looked around at all the mess. "Seraph, keep the building on lockdown until the doors are repaired, and disengage the defenses," he said, the irises opening and the drones disappearing as the normal lights came back on. "Seraph, call for the medics and have all injured staff taken to the infirmary." She nodded with a small wave and disappeared in a flash of white light. "Okay," he turned to the security. "This is confidential and is not to be spoken of. I'll debrief you tomorrow afternoon, and Seraph will arrange a time for you to come in." Harry sighed as they nodded understandingly. "Well, right now I am exhausted, so we'll be seeing you all tomorrow. Hopefully the rest of the night won't be as eventful for you." He smiled lightly as he took his sister and Ginny's hands. They smiled sheepishly back at him as he led them into the elevator and the sliding doors closed behind them. CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 9. Volunteering. Hermione Granger was having a good day. It had been 1 month, and 3 weeks give or take since Dumbledore and his stupid order had foolishly attacked CyberTech. In fact, those order members were not only lucky to be alive, but from what some order members said, the magical world was lucky to still be a secret from the Muggles. If it could be considered a secret with CyberTech and all its scientists and staff knowing about them. Dumbledore and the Order were really that dumb. Hermione couldn't help but sigh a little too much while thinking about that silly old basket case and his nutjob followers. Dumbledore was starting to sound worse than Voldemort. At least Voldemort didn't consider himself as a great and noble hero. Most villains knew people thought they were assholes. The day had started out nice as Hermione sat in her office at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry preparing for the first term of the new year of school, as she would have a new set of third years in her runes class. Her office was quite nice and big and all that good stuff, but it was a shame her wage packet was so small. It was lucky she got all her food for free and didn't have to pay rent on her apartment at the school. Hermione wondered how any mage got rich while being hampered in the wage department, as there weren't any payment rules like with the Muggles. If she got the chance, making a minimum wage would be a start, but without money she could only sigh. She sometimes wondered why she accepted this job, as it could get repetitive. Plus having to put up with Severus Snape nearly every day sneering got beyond the point of annoying. Hermione had even asked other teachers how they lasted so long without hexing him into oblivion. They had all answered along the same lines of they either avoided him like the plague or they used their imagination, where they beat him into a bloody pulp on a daily basis, just to tie them over. Hermione had finished her work by midday as school started in just over 3 weeks, so she had a lot of time to finish completely. She wouldn't let Amy know she was so far ahead that she could leave it as, or she would never hear the end of it. So, she left the school and traveled to the Order meeting taking place at Sirius Black's house, where her good day was ruined the moment Dumbledore began said meeting. It was another talk about possible methods to reclaim the girl who lived. Some of the stupid things Dumbledore had come up with were beyond idiocy and downright suicidal and probably would have caused even more trouble. Though, such schemes where Dumbledore tried going to the Muggle Prime Minister and getting him to demand Amanda's return to the Order of the Phoenix came back with amusing results. Dumbledore had not expected said Prime Minister to laugh at him, literally laugh in his face. It was lucky Tonks was there with the old man, or nobody would have heard about it. Apparently, once the Prime Minister had regained his control after Dumbledore had told him most of the story, he said thanks for the laugh, and then point-blank refused to even attempt to give them back anyone who willingly left. Dumbledore had tried claiming she was a runaway instead of a kidnap victim, as he had been trying to convince them. Apparently 23-year-olds were legally allowed to leave home whenever they wanted. Who knew? Yes. Sarcasm was a trait Hermione partook in when the time was ripe enough. From what Tonks told her, the Prime Minister said Harry Avalon held more power than he did, and supplied too much of the government's software, firmware, and technology for it to be smart to go against him in something so mundane as him pissing off the magical community. Not that he would have wanted to help the magical world anyway. The Prime Minister especially didn't like the thought of helping some morons who were trying to kidnap Amanda Avalon. That could potentially end him in a lot of trouble with a lot of people, and he did not want Avalon to demonstrate some new tech on Number 10. Now the old bastard, Dumbledore, had Hermione along with Sirius, Arthur Weasley, and Fred and George Weasley to go into CyberTech to try and convince Amy to return to the Order and her parents where she would be safe, or in Hermione's eyes, and any sane person's, prisoner. Amy and Ginny were safer than any of them with Harry. It didn't hurt that Harry was a genuinely great guy. Hermione felt a little jealous she didn't get to hang around him more. Not only eye candy, but a genius eye candy with some of the best tech labs on the planet. The five of them stood in the large lobby of CyberTech looking around nervously. The front of the building had been repaired, and Hermione had been surprised when she found out that CyberTech was charging Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix for the damages caused. Dumbledore kept throwing the letters away, saying it was nonsense. He hadn't looked so sure the last time a letter arrived, as it was from a solicitor's giving them their last warning. Apparently, the goblins at Gringotts were only too happy for their law firm to work for CyberTech while dealing with matters in the magical world, which was probably now their largest ever client. If there was something scarier than Voldemort or Death Eaters, it was a powerful company calling in their lawyers on you. Hermione knew that if CyberTech had used Muggle lawyers, that Dumbledore would have thrown the letter away like all of the bills. However, Harry wasn't a multi-billionaire for nothing, and Gringotts law were the best of the best in magical law and claiming for their clients money or compensation, and Dumbledore was having his ass dragged through the courts if he didn't pay up, including expenses spent on Gringotts. The worst part for Dumbledore was that this was not the criminal courts controlled by the Ministry. This was a civil court. They didn't give a shit who you were. They took in the evidence, and there was apparently a lot of evidence. Then they made you pay. If you couldn't pay in one go, they would mediate a payment plan. It turned out to some concealed amusement that Dumbledore wasn't much liked by some of the judges working civil cases, as he had used pull-and tricks to get out of being fined by them on multiple occasions for things Hermione was curious about, but he wouldn't tell anyone, so Hermione figured it was for something messed up. Dumbledore wouldn't be able to run from a company, and it was obvious he was giving paying the bills thought. It was pathetic. Dumbledore caused criminal damage. If Harry wanted, he could have him arrested, by the magical world or not. Dumbledore committed a crime. His reputation would have been greatly tarnished even if he got off from the magical world. Hermione wondered why she even bothered with the Order anymore. The old man had obviously lost his mind. Normally you negotiate before you try invading somewhere, but he got it the wrong way around. She hoped the old man's stubbornness took him to court and he loses. Sighing, Hermione took in the lobby in all its glory. Large was an understatement. The ground floor alone could give Hogwarts a run for its money. It was open plan with great columns running the length and width, reaching up about 3 floors to the ceiling. Then to one end they had 6 massive escalators leading up to a second floor that had a balcony running around the lobby where the ceiling was lower. Then more escalators going up further with a constant flow of people coming and going, left, right, and center. Towards the left was a massive restaurant with the name Avalon above the open doors. The restaurant was packed with staff eating breakfast and chatting with each other. There were some round coffee bars spread out around the lobby with little coffee tables around them full of other staff members grabbing coffees to go or taking a seat with holographic screens, and keyboards appearing as they played with some buttons on their bracelets. To the far right were rows of holographic information screens where guests signed in and then followed labeled lights towards their destinations, up escalators or into the huge lifts that span either side and behind the escalators. Then there was a massive information desk ran by actual people, with small queues leading to each customer service staff all dressed in blue CyberTech suit or skirt suit uniforms with the logo on the right-hand breast pocket, and white shirt or blouse. Hermione looked back to the restaurant where the staff there wore similar yet more casual versions of the uniform with aprons worn in different ways. The coffee stand staff were wearing that uniform too. There was even an Avalon-branded supermarket. "There's a freaking multi-story supermarket in an office building," Hermione said in her own head as it had glass windows and went up to the 3rd floor. They must have had shutters that were either closed or closed during the attack, as no one mentioned the CyberTech lobby was practically a shopping mall as her eyes scanned over a large gift store, and other shops, and 2 smaller restaurants as she looked up, and some fast food bars with pizza and burger this early in the morning. However, Hermione thought that over, and if the building was open all day and night it was likely dinner time for some of them. She shivered as this was just the entrance. Tears streamed through her eyes. Hermione turned her attention back to the reception desks and looked to the lower-level ceiling above it, though low was an understatement, and her eyes flashed over the logos there. She couldn't see any seams from where she was but knew that behind them were drone docks with weaponized drones. "Are any of you actually planning to try and persuade Amy to come back?" asked Sirius suddenly with an amused smirk on his lips as he realized Hermione jumped. She had zoned out so far looking around, but even he was beyond amazed. "'Cause I only came to say hello, maybe get a cup of tea out of it, and get to properly meet my godson, and apparently I don't have a clue," he said gesturing around the brightly lit chamber in awe. "You could fit Hogwarts in here," George couldn't help but exclaim. Well yeah, but I'm just here to see my daughter," said Arthur with a sheepish shrug as his eyes kept wandering as several small drones flew overhead mostly unnoticed or people just didn't care. "Well that and Hermione keeps on talking about how advanced the Muggle gadgets are here," he said lamely as he was sure he would never be underwhelmed here. "I also want to see how my baby girl's doing with this new job I heard about," he chuckled nervously. "We're just here to visit our sister too," said Fred with a shrug as he gestured himself and his brother and around him widely as he dodged out of the way of a guy in an automated wheelchair. "Sorry," the guy called out as he passed and took hold of the joystick on his right chair arm, and the orange light around a control panel on his left armrest turned blue. "New patch screwed up self-nav around too many." What else he was going to say went unheard as he was drowned out by the crowds of staff and visitors. "That was strange," George said weakly. "Yeah," Fred agreed before shrugging. "We live with magic and this is the weirdest place I've ever been." "Anyhow," George said with a shrug as he turned his attention back to his companions. "There's not a chance in hell Amanda will even consider coming back to the stupid old man, after all of the crap he's pulled." "Yeah," agreed Fred. "Plus, this guy's super rich and super smart, and our sister has an in with him. There might be some business opportunities. His shop is quite a bigger than ours," he said while he and his brother looked around at all of the amazing things while they nodded together in agreement. "I'm just here to see my friends," sighed Hermione tiredly as she led them towards the reception desk while trying not to let them see her staring around too much. "Are any of us even loyal to that stupid old man or do we all think he has lost the plot of reality?" "Lost the plot of reality," they all answered together chuckling as they moved quickly through a small group of visitors. Hermione rolled her eyes as they finally reached the desk where a smiling woman sat behind. "How can I help you?" the reception woman asked as she frowned while playing with a little blue earpiece with mic on her right ear. "We're here to see Amanda Avalon and Ginevra Weasley," said Hermione with a small smile. "Sorry," the woman replied after a few moments of typing on a holographic keyboard and swiping at a hollow screen below eye level with a darkened back and out of the way. "You don't have an appointment, so I'm afraid that's impossible. Neither have any appointments arranged for today. Come back when you have an appointment please and have a nice day." "What? But how do we get an appointment?" asked Sirius hurriedly. "I suppose you could phone the person or persons you want to speak with and I'm sure they'll arrange it," she answered with a smile. "Then can you give us their phone numbers?" asked Hermione hopefully. The receptionist shook her head sadly. "I'm afraid not, ma'am. I am not permitted to give out personal phone numbers of staff let alone Mr. Avalon's sister and personal assistant." "Then how do we phone them?" asked Hermione in annoyance. The woman just continued smiling as she placed a small card with a number on it and the company logo on the counter. "You'll have to phone this building and ask to be patched through to the person you are calling," she said smiling cheerfully. Hermione picked up the card, looked at the free phone number, and nodded. Could I use your phone?" she asked the woman hopefully. "Of course," she agreed happily, as she placed a small black sleek smartphone on the counter and Hermione picked it up frowning as the woman unlocked it for her with a swipe of her finger across the glass, and allowing the screen to light up with a picture of the woman with who must have been her husband cuddling together in normal clothes, and many little icons of some kind. Frowning, Hermione wasn't sure what to do when she noticed the little phone-like button and pushed it in surprise. It amazed her as the dial pad popped open so she typed in the number, surprised when she was barely a quarter way through that under where the number appeared with each number entered. CyberTech General Inquiries Head Office popped up on screen with the phone number she had been typing in small print underneath. Pressing the button on the glass, Hermione was surprised again as it started calling and quickly placed the phone to her ear. The receptionist ignored them for a moment as she tapped the device in her ear and answered her own call. "Good afternoon, CyberTech, how may I help?" "Hello," said Hermione as someone answered the phone after a few rings. "I was told that you might be able to patch me through to either Amanda Avalon or Ginevra Weasley," she asked hopefully. "Yes, may I have your name please?" the receptionist asked. "Hermione Granger." I'm afraid your name isn't on the approved list. May I take a message?" Yes please." Hermione then tailed off and looked up at the receptionist, who was now snickering, and hung up the phone glaring. "That was not freaking funny."
"Yes, it was,"
laughed George as he realized what had happened.
"Elevator 2B, said the receptionist, still laughing as she gestured towards the lifts furthest to the left. "Just step in, and the elevator will know where to take you."
Hermione just grumbled in annoyance as she placed down the receptionist's phone and stalked off through the crowds towards the elevators, with the others snickering as they followed her. Even Arthur couldn't help but laugh. After all, he appreciated a good prank. "That was the best prank I've seen in a while," said Sirius, chuckling as they reached the elevator, the doors sliding open and they stepped in. Nobody else followed them in, even though there were other people waiting for lifts, as a holographic blue sign said the lift was reserved. The doors closed behind them, and they waited as the elevator ascended. "Wow, those light things are pretty cool," George commented while calming from his laughter. "Holograms," Hermione grumblingly told him with a glare, "and that was not nice," glared Hermione. "I bet that was Amanda's doing." "No, that was Ginny's," she hissed. "Amanda would have kept it going longer, and had us strip searched or something." "You have a point there," agreed Sirius, shivering at the thought. Suddenly the doors opened, and they looked out into a large clean white room with lifts in a squared U facing a large corridor beyond some security doors, where two large men in blue and black security uniforms sat at a security desk with hollow screens next to a metal detection gate leading to the doors. The men looked a little bored as one was playing with his phone and the other was watching some kind of film on a laptop that was sat on the desk with the volume on low. However, there were two women waiting for them by the elevator doors, and wearing white medical scrubs, their hair covered in white masks over their mouths and noses and white rubber gloves. The corridor looked as if it probably led to some kind of hospital. It was so perfectly clean with security and security doors ahead. Hermione looked to the white room and there was a sign saying it was Medical Facility A2, R&D. "Hello, gentlemen, lady," one of the doctors said cheerfully. "I'm afraid that before you get to see anyone above this floor you are in need of a full medical and cavity scan. Security reasons, I'm sure you understand, especially after the attack 2 months ago," she added the last as an afterthought, and they could actually see the outline of her grin. The 5 in the lift paled dramatically. "Why, you can't be serious," gulped Arthur. "This is just another practical joke, right?" "I'm afraid not, sir, but fear not, we are not charging. We have quite a few interns who need the practice," the other replied, shaking her head sympathetically. "I've unfortunately been there. If you could sign here," she said, handing a tablet and stylus over to each of them. "Wait, this says we're volunteering," Hermione said after a few moments reading. "What do you mean by research subjects and medical equipment testing?" she asked as she looked up to see the other 4 had been shown where to sign and hadn't even read what they were signing. "It's just a technicality," the other doctor said with a sigh. "We've both done this, too. Come on, it will only take about an hour out of your day and you get a free medical exam out of it too." Hermione groaned as she pouted and skimmed through the rest of the contract before signing. "Well, it does say we get a £100 prepaid card, so I suppose that's something for just an hour out of our time." "See," the other doctor said this time. £100 just for hanging out and taking a medical, easy cash, right?" They all reluctantly nodded as the doctors ushered them out of the elevator and led them into what was very obviously a medical facility more advanced than any of them had ever imagined seeing in all their lives, with lots more doctors and nurses bustling around with a few eager for some new volunteers. Unfortunately, the security guards didn't even bat an eyelid when the metal detectors bleeped off with red lights as they passed through. Sirius, Arthur, Fred and George were then led from Hermione by 2 male doctors, for their own comfort, while Hermione was led into an examination room by the 2 female doctors. Hermione was much too embarrassed to care to pay too much attention to the wonders she passed this time. "Is this really necessary?" asked Harry as he sat in his office behind his desk watching the horrors unfold on a holographic screen while Ginny and Amy were sitting either side on his desk laughing insanely. "No,
But it's damn funny, and they did volunteer. Hermione even read the contract, giggled Amy in amusement as she watched Hermione looking freaked out as about 20 female intern doctors as they began poking, prodding, taking blood, the usual, and then poking and prodding some more with strange scanners and other things she couldn't name. As she stood or sat in the nude looking beyond uncomfortable. Anyway, I bet Hermione hasn't had a good medical since joining the wizarding world, and Ginny and I have already been tricked into volunteering. £100 was not enough. Anyway, I'm certain the others have never had a proper medical before in their lives like Ginny and I hadn't. Harry sighed. Yeah, but should I even be watching this? He asked as he winced in sympathy with the girl. She's naked in there. You are a doctor, you've seen it all before, said Ginny in amusement. Yes, I'm a doctor of cybernetics, not medicine, he answered with a shake of his head. I was never confident with medical stuff. That's why I have a medical research center ran by actual doctors. Maybe we should see how your dad and brothers are doing. He asked with a smirk aimed at Ginny. No, 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 she cried out in panic. Seraph, turn it off, save me. She squealed, and the screen disappeared. She sighed in relief. At least my prank wasn't that mean. I still can't believe all of those doctors agreed to scam them into volunteering with this, said Amy with a content sigh. Harry shrugged. Well, we have a fair few interns with a lot of new tech and untested equipment, so of course they legally give such invasive exams to anyone they can get to volunteer. They'll end up scamming everyone they can. They love eager new employees. Plus, they're extra excited to have some new mage. What's that? Asked Hermione shakily as one of the doctors came at her with some kind of device with a long hair thin string-like rod attached with a nozzle on the end with a faded red light. Internal scanner, she replied kindly. If you could just sit up on the bed and open your legs, this won't take more than a minute. What? She stuttered in panic, backing up a little. Why you want to put that up, am I? What does it do? What's it for? It checks for any hidden devices within your body, the doctor explained. It also scans for any internal abnormalities within your passages that older systems could never pick up until it is too late. We can do it rectally if you want, but I heard it is not as comfortable. Hermione gulped and just climbed up onto the bed. Sitting on the edge, she opened her legs and closed her eyes, blushing brightly as she could feel the eyes of the doctors and nurses on her. She felt the doctor's gloved fingers touching her, and pulled her lips open a little more before something cold and metallic was gently slid inside her hole. She gasped a little at the cold as she felt the odd feeling of something worming its way through her body for a minute or so. It surprised her it didn't feel as uncomfortable as she had thought it would, and it was soon over, and she was sitting without some weird device in her. If Hermione had not been so freaked out by all these doctors and nurses staring at and touching her naked body, she might have actually enjoyed seeing all of these interesting new medical gadgets. She looked up and almost cried as another doctor was holding some other device looking similar to the first. What's that? Hermione whimpered in fear. It's just a new rectal camera, the doctor answered. It's actually practically brand new, barely tested. It was made so that the patient no longer needs to be sedated during full rectal exams. Plus, it only takes a few moments as it scans and records everything. Oh, she said barely audibly. Who invents all of this stuff? The doctor shrugged. Doctors and technicians who work for CyberTech. So, if you could please come down from there and bend over the bed, we can get this over with. Just think, when this is over, you'll hopefully know you are perfectly healthy, though you should probably exercise more. However, if we do find some abnormalities, we can begin treatment right away, okay? Hermione just nodded and slipped off the bed, looking defeated as she bent over it and felt the doctor's hands as they strapped her in place. Meanwhile, in another testing room. There is no freaking way you're shoving that up my ass, yelled Sirius as he glared at the thin bendy rod. Well, he thought rod, but it was a lot thinner, almost as thin as a hair. You already shoved that other one down my fucking throat. Do you have any idea how uncomfortable that was? Actually, yes, said the doctor with a slight quiver. I was tricked into this 3 months ago when I joined. Think yourself lucky, women have to have a similar one shoved up there. Well, it has better access to the womb. Sirius quivered at the thought. Well, why doesn't that scanner thing you used before just scan through a person? Because it's only a first edition, he answered with a sigh. For a year's work being able to scan the skin and blood for abnormalities, it's bloody perfect. Well, yeah, but I still don't want that thing up my ass, he retorted hotly. Nobody ever does, the doctor replied sadly, while all the other doctors nodded in agreement as the medical department had been called Scam Town as a joke. Just close your eyes and think of something else. At least when we're done, you'll know exactly how healthy you are or whether you need to cut back on certain foods to live a longer, fuller life, he said, eyeing Sirius's gut and making him feel self-conscious. Sirius cringed, but he obeyed. Meanwhile, Amy was smiling happily, as she sat at her desk in the large office outside Harry's office playing solitaire on her computer when she whooped for joy at winning another game as the elevator door opened. She looked over and bit her lower lip to keep herself from laughing as she saw Hermione, Fred, George, Arthur and Sirius walking out looking uncomfortable. They were all looking violated and annoyed, though for some reason both Arthur and Hermione both looked worried about something. "Hello," she called happily. "It's nice of you all to visit us, or is this a business call?" "Huh, Hermione, Mr. Weasley, why are you both carrying pills?" she asked suddenly as they stopped by her desk. "I have high cholesterol and blood pressure," said Arthur sheepishly, showing her the 3 bottles of pills he had been given. "The doctor said I have to take one of each 3 times a day and come back in a month for a new prescription of tablets, and 3 months for a checkup," he said with a smile as he showed her his appointment form before placing everything in his pocket. "They also gave me a flyer with foods I should eat and foods I shouldn't. They said I've been eating too much junk and fried food, and that I need to cut it out or I could have a heart attack. Apparently, I'm old." He chuckled a little at that. "Your wife isn't going to like you taking medical advice from muggles," said Sirius with a wince. "But after the hell they put us through, even I intend to at least cut back on all those fatty foods. I do not want to end up back there if I can help it." "Yeah, well, I have no choice," said Arthur. "But they said my next checkup will only be a scan and blood test. I'll just have to try and keep this secret from Molly. I had a checkup with the Midi wizard not long ago and they had not mentioned the danger I was putting myself in, but I haven't even heard about this before, and I know the muggles are more advanced than magical people in medicine. Not to mention that's the most advanced hospital on the planet," added in Amy helpfully. "You did that to us for a joke, didn't you?" accused George suddenly. "Kind of," she agreed with a smirk. "Actually, after the attack it became protocol to be a bit more studious. But we try to steal everyone we can into volunteering so we can test some of our newer devices and our doctors can get in some practice. Anyway, at least Mr. Weasley's getting some medication now and the right kind of advice. They even assigned me my very own doctor," he said with a small smile. "Dr. Matheson. He even gave me a number to call if I'm ever feeling ill. He's only one of those interns, but he has over a year's experience and has at least finished medical school." "Well, what about you, Hermione?" asked Amy suddenly, just remembering she had some pills too but had obviously put them away. Hermione looked uncomfortable and scared for a moment. "I have to go back after I've finished here. They want to keep me for some more tests." They all just stared at her worriedly as tears started leaking from her eyes. I have leukemia. Bone cancer." Amy and the others just stared at her with wide eyes as she silently sobbed. Sirius, acting quickly, pulled the poor girl into his arms and let her continue crying on him, not sure how else to comfort her more. "But how?" asked Amy, choked up as her own tears built up in her eyes. I don't get it, but even magic can't sort out cancers." I know, but it can still be treated with medicine," Hermione cried, her voice slightly muffled on Sirius's shirt. "But they said it's a strain they've never even heard of before. They said it could have been induced, and only magic could do that," she said, pulling out of Sirius's arms. She wiped her eyes and looked at her feet. "They didn't say it was a curse or potion, but what else could make a new type of illness? And they wouldn't be able to tell if I were cursed or poisoned." "I don't know what to say," replied Amy sadly before brightening slightly. "But I'm sure the doctors downstairs will do everything to get you better. Would you like for me to send for your parents?" I've already called them," she said sadly. "They'll be here in a few hours. I don't know how to tell them. I can just say they were shocked I told them to come here." "Well, let's put this from our minds for now," said Amy as she stood up and walked around her desk. She gave Hermione a huge hug before pulling back and smiling. "Come on, let's go see Ginny and Harry," she said, leading them to the door. Hermione smiled a little as she followed, and the doors automatically slid open. "Harry, give me that back." "No," he laughed, and those at the door stopped and stared dumbly as Harry and Ginny were in a tangled heap on the floor. Harry was holding a yellow palm top out of reach as Ginny tried her hardest to reclaim it from him, but to no avail. "Give it back. It took me ages to figure out how to work it and I like this one. You already broke my black one, and I like this one better." Harry just laughed insanely. "Nah. I think I'll get you an evil green slithering one with a snake on the back. I know how you love snakes." "Ah, I hate snakes," she retorted as she struggled harder to get her palm top back. "Come on, give it back. I was trying to work. You know I was rescheduling that meeting with the Prime Minister. If you don't give it back, he'll just turn up and you'll have to see him today." "You're just a spoil sport," he chuckled as he let her have it back. "You could just use the Seraph network," he said with a laugh as he tapped the yellow bracelet around her right wrist. However, Ginny snatched her palm top back from his hand while kneeling either side of him, and sitting on his lap, and hugging her mini-computer lovingly while sticking her tongue out at him. "Actually, I rescheduled that meeting ages ago. I was playing Pac-Man," she giggled as he pouted at her. "Sarah won't let me play Pac-Man using her system." Harry rolled his eyes, so he was surprised as she leant down and gave him a quick sneak kiss on the forehead like he was her misbehaving child, before someone cleared their throat, making them jump apart and to their feet. The others had arrived, and most were snickering as they blushed lightly at the intrusion. "Oh, hello," said Harry impishly. "It's nice to meet you all. Ah, the Weasley twins, Fred and George. I've heard a good deal about you two, owners of Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes. How would you two like to sell small explosives that hunt and blow up Death Eaters?" "We would," they both replied eagerly. "So, would I? So when you invent them, do tell," he replied, chuckling at their dumbfounded expressions. "Well, enough joking, why don't you all take a seat?" he said, gesturing a seating section of the massive top-floor office, and everyone moved over and took seats, with Amy and Ginny sitting each side of their boss, and the others opposite. It was nice that Hermione was smiling as she decided to put her worries aside for a while before she had to see her doctor later. "So how are you doing, sweetheart?" asked Arthur of his daughter after a moment. "I'm great, thanks, Dad," she chimed cheerfully. "So, what are you guys doing here anyway?" "Officially we're here to persuade Amanda to come back," said Sirius. "Unofficially we don't give a shit what Dumbledore wants. We don't even know why he wants you back so much, other than that blasted prophecy." CyberTech Worlds Clash. Chapter 10. Wonderland. "Mr. and Mrs. Granger, please try not to worry yourselves too much," said a young medical technician as he spoke with Hermione Granger and her parents as Harry, Amy, and Jenny led her twin brothers, father and Sirius around for a quick look around some of the building. "This is a new form of bone cancer unlike any we've seen before. It's very odd indeed. It seems to start on your marrow working its way out leak. I suppose like I would imagine a trickle of liquid nitrogen into the bones would be. What? But that's bad, right?" Mr. Granger asked worriedly before his daughter managed to comment. Mr. Granger was a pale man, like his daughter, while they both contrasted greatly to Mrs. Granger's dark skin. His hair was light brown and wispy as it thinned, and he had blue eyes, while his wife's hair was dark brown, near black and frizzy, cut to her neck, and she had dark hazel eyes like her daughter. It had come as a surprise to Mr. and Mrs. Granger that their daughter had requested that they hurry to CyberTech headquarters immediately, and even more surprising as they were led in straight away and into their medical facility B5. However, discovering their daughter had been taken on as a patient by some of the best doctors in the world because of this was incredible, and now they were both concerned. It could be something to do with magic, and Mr. Granger found himself so worried he would most likely end up blabbing if he was not careful. His wife was always so much calmer when it came to, well, everything. It had always frustrated him to have to explain to people why Hermione was white while her mother was black. Though, he was surprised the doctor hadn't brought it up. Most did, doctors included, but maybe Hermione already clued them in or something. It would be just like her to head things off like that. How hard was it for people to know that these things sometimes happened? It could happen completely the opposite way, while it was more common the other way. They were normally expecting half and half, but they both loved Hermione no matter what. "Yes, I'm afraid so," the doctor agreed after a short pause where Mr. Granger started, as his mind tended to run wild and off tangent when worried, especially when it came to their only child, even when their only child was all grown up. His wife started him further as she took his hand and gave him a gentle smile before they returned their full attention to the doctor. However,
The doctor quickly continued, "We do have some experimental regeneration treatments and therapies we shall be using. Hopefully over the next few months the progression should have lessened. Anyway, we do not feel that she is in any immediate danger as its progress is slow at best, and we have caught it at a very early stage. Though, if it does have some kind of outside cause, any continued exposure will escalate its progression. Hopefully Mississippi Granger you shall, if all things go to plan, be fit and free of this within an estimated 12-month treatment period." Hermione nodded while looking both relieved and worried. But these treatments will work, right?" The doctor nodded. "I believe so, Miss Granger, as your illness is not very advanced and we've caught it in such early development," he spoke, reassuring her again with a soft smile. "But nothing can be 100%, you should understand that." Hermione nodded her head while her mother wrapped her arms around her from where they sat side by side and gave her a motherly kiss on the cheek. "May I ask," the doctor said slowly before carrying on at the nods he received, "whether you have, in the last 6 months or so, been anywhere unusual as it may allow us to discover a source of your cancerous cells?" Well," she began but trailed off and shook her head even though she was sure she could mention magical things, and from his look, Hermione was sure that was what the doctor was asking. "Hermione," her mother interrupted in worried reprimand. "He's a doctor and trying to help. I'm sure if you even have the smallest of ideas, you should tell him even if it's about you know what." I can't, Mum," she answered. "I could get into some serious trouble," she said while biting her lower lip as she thought it over. She doubted the magical world could do anything to her with CyberTech backing her up, and the Ministry didn't seem to care that Amy joined the Muggles. "She's a witch," her father just blurted out. Hermione's parents had expected the doctor to look surprised and unbelieving, but he just nodded. "I see," he nodded again. "Mr. Avalon has been kind enough to get us a wealth of books on potions. The cures and treatments within are incredible, even the possibility to regrow limbs with medicine. We have started analyzing ingredients for potential synthesis, and use of their component parts for greater effect and efficiency, the possibility of putting them into more convenient uses. Therefore, I believe it is safe to inform me as it may help us devise a potential protection, so others won't have to suffer the bother of long treatments. It was 3 months ago when my boss asked me to head to a magical prison called Azkaban," Hermione began nervously. "There was this man imprisoned and he promised information if he was placed in minimum security, so I was sent. Well, the prison has these ghouls guarding it. Their very presence sends a frozen cold through your bones and sucks the happiness out of the air. They can also kiss the soul out of people. But if it was from them, then what about the people working there?" The doctor had just stared at her for a moment before his face turned into a look of disgust. "You torture your criminals?" he demanded, outraged. "Hey, I don't like it any more than you," she retorted heatedly. "I can't stop the corrupt jerks, and the fact without the criminals to feed on they'll run amok and start feeding on the emotions of innocent people." "I see," he replied in thought. "My apologies, Miss Granger. I was out of line as I had not all of the facts and let my emotions go unchecked, but it seems these creatures could be responsible for your current condition. If I may, could you tell me of their weaknesses? I'm sure like most creatures do, they have at least one, and maybe R&D could come up with something to deal with them." Hermione nodded. "The only thing capable is a charm that focuses positive emotions to create a barrier, but I'm unsure whether it can destroy them or not. I suppose if it were strong enough. Also, eating chocolate after exposure dulls the effects away and brings back the warmth." "Thank you. We'll have to get some books on these things," he muttered to himself as he typed away at his computer. "These things sound dangerous," he finished up and turned back to Hermione and her parents. "Sorry about that. I was just sending up the information to the head of research and development for evaluation." "That's quite all right, thank you," Hermione said quietly. "So, when is my first appointment?" "Oh, right, yes, let's see," he mumbled before getting to work on his computer. "How is tomorrow afternoon at 2:30? Dr. McGinnis will be free to begin your treatment." "That's fine, thank you, doctor." "Say what?" asked Sirius as Harry was showing them a large garage space under the building, staring at 2 little plastic dog things, after a lot of other cool stuff, pouncing around, yipping happily with bright eyes and occasionally different types and colored fur which materialized on them, making them look almost real. "They're dogs? Cyber pets," said Amy smugly and proudly as she glared at Sirius.
They're really cute. I can't wait till they're working properly so I can get one. I was thinking about a kitty, but that won't be for a few years. Yip yip, one cried out, jumping up Sirius's leg. Well, I suppose they are kind of. Ah crap, that hurt, Sirius said angrily as he kicked one as it bit him, and he kicked it away and it ran to hide behind Ginny's legs. Ginny glared at him. Don't kick it, these things are both worth £5 million each unless you're going to pay to have it repaired. Sirius shook his hands in defense. Sorry, but it freaking bit me. It doesn't even have any teeth, Amy muttered while rolling her eyes. Maybe not, but it's still pinched, he complained. And now it's hiding from me. Harry, you said these things can't feel. It's just reacting to behavioral programming, he answered. I have yet to integrate any form of advanced AI or EPU systems, as I'm unsure whether I should. Why not? Asked one of the twins. That would make them like Seraph, right, which is totally cool. And if I built millions and they broke free of humans and decided to take over the world, who is going to stop them? You? He retorted smugly. They could do that? No, but I'm not sure about the ethical ramifications, he replied. They could potentially be classed as a sentient life form. Therefore, it stands to reason that some nutbar SJWs down the road will start calling it slavery. So, I guess close facsimiles is as close as one can get. But they are still brilliant, Arthur said, still awed by them as he watched them play and change and not having a clue what an SJW was, but knew from Harry's tone they were terribly frustrating people. Hermione, are you sure you'll be all right? Her father asked in worry as she led them back to the lobby. I'll be fine, Dad, she replied. Harry, Mr. Avalon has said I can stay here the night with Amanda and Ginny, so they'll be with me. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? They both sighed, but her mother gave her a big hug and a smile. I know you're old enough to look after yourself, but we still worry, her mother said while she gave her dad a quick hug. The magical world isn't safe, and after what you've just been saying about Dumbledore, I think you would be better off quitting your job. Perhaps you could get something here? You are very bright and know a lot about magic, and best friends with the boss's sister. Mum, Dad, Hermione sighed. Just go home and be careful, okay, and phone me when you get in. Okay sweetie, bye. And her parents left. Hermione sighed and slipped back into the lift, but it moved without her offering a command. She had startled as she took note of the older woman in the lift with her. That was strange. The woman must have slipped in while she was saying her farewell to her parents. The woman had bright blonde hair down to her shoulders and dark blue eyes behind some stylish silver-framed glasses, with a long white coat with ID badge pinned on the left, open to show off her dark blue dress and huge cleavage, and shoes that Hermione knew would kill her to wear. Hermione caught the grimace at staring, but she couldn't help it from the way the woman's makeup was perfect, shadowing her eyes, and with red painted lips, nails, feet, and fingers, and she had flawless skin. So, you're Hermione Granger, the young woman who has made us aware of the possible need to exterminate a horde of soul-sucking demons? The woman suddenly asked with a smirk on her perfectly red lips. Hermione could only nod. Well, it's nice to meet you, I'm Cornelia Klein, head of R&D. Hermione gulped as this woman could play the part of Aphrodite, and she held her hand out to shake. Hermione nervously took the older woman's hand and Cornelia shook tight but wouldn't let go, as she licked her lips in a gently suggestive way, like she could read minds or took great pleasure in making people around her squirm. She was obviously well aware of herself and liked to play games. She probably got on well with Ginny and Amy. I couldn't help but overhear, Cornelia began. Mainly because I was eavesdropping, after all the walls have ears. That your parents want you to quit your job. And to get a safer job away from some twisted old man. She paused with a wicked grin as she moved closer. They seem to think you're a bit on the clever side. Said you know a lot about magic. I could use a girl like you. For more than just my mana-related assistant. The position holds apprenticeships in many fields and even full schooling if you choose. I have plenty of staff that would love to have a witch as a part of their team in my department, myself included, and I'm the boss, so I guess if you were to accept my offer your butt is mine, figuratively speaking of course. Cornelia added the last few words with a wink and her tone sounded as if the last 4 words were the lie. Hermione could easily tell the woman liked to tease people, even though she didn't give off some kind of vibe that said she was either gay or at the least bisexual. Though, that really didn't matter to Hermione. Heck, she found out from the Order's attack that Ginny and Amy were bi or gay, She wasn't sure on that and it hadn't come up, but the woman was throwing her a huge opportunity. Not only was she offering her a job at CyberTech in R&D of all places but in her own personal team. Hermione was brought out of her thoughts as the lift stopped and opened. She wasn't sure what floor it was, as she missed the announcement, but from what she could see from the security door, and the huge security offices either side of the metal detectors that looked a lot different compared to the ones on the medical floors, this place was extremely high security. She figured it had to be R&D, but there were no signs and the floor, ceiling, and walls were a matte white, so clean you could likely eat off them with no worries. It reminded Hermione a bit of the medical floors but felt dangerous, like she had a million eyes on her. There were holograms all throughout the room with every single angle possible showing both Hermione and Cornelia as they stood in the lift. Hermione blushed as one screen showed up Cornelia's dress to see her black knickers. Cornelia laughed as she saw why Hermione was suddenly blushing. "That's just Seraph showing off," she said as she leant over to whisper in Hermione's ear. "She really wants to impress you," she said looking down as Hermione was thankful she was wearing trousers. Only Seraph's security protocols see every angle unless there's any reason to show other angles to anyone. Hermione gulped as she realized that this floor was likely one of the so-called maximum security departments. The black tech labs that every geek or nerd or genius on the planet dreamt of just looking around. "How about it?" Cornelia asked with a temptress's smile. "Just a little peek, too. Pique your curiosity?" she said with a saucy come-hither gesture as she began leaving the elevator backwards. Hermione slowly followed after the woman and damned her own blasted weakness as the elevator doors closed behind them, and Hermione found the blonde's hand snaking carefully into hers. "Welcome to Wonderland." "So, you're saying this board thing flies?" asked George, eyeing the board suspiciously. It had an appearance that was flat-bottomed with angled edges wider at the front and thicker than a snowboard but shorter than a surfboard, but made out of alloy with rough grip tread on top and carbon fiber around the edges. Harry shrugged with a wide grin as he gestured around the monumental underground racetrack. "Well, the ceilings are quite high if you want to disprove me." George smirked. "Awesome, this will be cool," he declared as he looked around. He had thought above ground was huge. It was lucky they hadn't found the Gringotts tunnels while building this. However, George's sister grabbed his arm and glared at him. "This is a £2 billion piece of equipment. Are you sure you can afford it if you break it?" The young man's face paled at the thought as he looked to Harry and shook his head in defiance. "I think I'll take your word for it, mate. Anyway, I think it's about time we head on home. I wish we didn't have to though. Maybe we should stay at the shop tonight?" His twin nodded in agreement. "Yeah, good idea. Deal with Mum in the morning, boys," their father reprimanded. "I'll be joining you." The twins laughed while Sirius rolled his eyes. "At least I have my own place to hide out," he said. Hermione rode the elevator up to Harry's apartment with her mouth still open in awe. She had spent a few hours with Miss Klein being shown some of their less secret projects, and she could barely believe the stuff that they had come up with. It was like seeing an idea in science fiction and making it a reality, and that was not to mention that she had a little peek at some more magical-related products, and seeing that they were trying to reverse engineer the magic from flu travel was just a wowing experience, considering from what she saw, they weren't likely to fail, and if they succeeded, Hermione could see a lot of travel companies put out of business, or at least diversifying into portal travel. The middling thing was that Hermione was pretty sure that CyberTech R&D would make flu travel easier, safer, and a lot cleaner if they got rid of the need for a fire or fireplace. Hermione was near certain the only reason Mississippi Klein showed her that project was to destroy all of her nerdy defenses, as getting science to figure out such a magical secret would net the researchers and scientists immortality in the history books. Miss Klein had let her leave asking that she take a little time to think about the offer. Hermione could picture all of the things she could build, the possibility to cross over that taboo border, well taboo to the magical world, to mix science and magic, to perhaps understand the universe better than they already did, and perhaps discover a secret that had plagued mage for centuries. How and why? What was magic and how and why have they got it, and what was the difference between a Muggle born and their Muggle parents or Muggle siblings? It was all so tempting, but Hermione realized what they wanted was for her to not only break magical law, but betray the magical world. If she did, she could do so much good for Muggles and magic. If she didn't,
they could possibly find someone else and she would foolishly miss out on such a chance to expand her knowledge, and maybe someday be in a history book.
Hey, Hermione.
She was interrupted and looked up to see the elevator doors wide open, showing the inside of a huge apartment with Ginny curled up on the couch with a holographic screen hovering in front of her face, and a cup of cocoa in her hands. She had a yellow bracelet on her wrist that seemed to have a soft corona of light skimming the surface. Hermione felt her cheeks light up slightly, as Ginny was only wearing a really short tee that just barely hid her panties, and still Hermione caught a flash of blue as the girl stared at her through the transparent screen. Are you just going to stay in there all day daydreaming, or are you coming in? Amy left you some PJs you can borrow in the bathroom down the hall. Just follow the yellow ball floating in the air.
Hermione was startled as a yellow ball of light appeared out of nowhere and realized it was the holographic emitters stationed all over the building. She supposed it was a handy little trick for directing people to certain offices without other staff members needing to waste their time, and she felt foolish that she had missed the Muggles advancing so fast while she had been hidden away in the magical world.
Oh, okay, thanks Ginny, she replied nervously, hoping Amanda didn't give her some PJs that showed her off too much.
But what's with that bracelet?
I've seen loads of people wearing them, and they're portable hollow frequencers. Or PHFs.
Huh?
Hermione asked, feeling stupid for once asking Ginny of all things about Muggle stuff.
Ginny laughed. That's what Amy and I said, she replied.
They're so the keyboard and screen can track my movements more efficiently while using the Seraph network, or as some people call it, the S-net.
But don't call it the Skynet. She takes offense to that movie making out AI being idiots.
Wait. Is that from Terminator?
Ginny shrugged.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay, Hermione said thoughtfully before shrugging.
Anyway, where is Amanda?
And Harry?
She asked in wonder.
Amy's in our room taking a bath,
she answered while shrugging.
And Hermione didn't miss the hour room. And Harry is off in his secret lab everybody knows exists somewhere, but don't know where, doing something or other. Everyone nicknamed it Eden because we all know that it contains nothing but forbidden fruit.
Hermione started.
Does he know everybody knows about it? She asked as she wondered mildly what she would have to do to get invited into Eden.
Ginny laughed while rolling her eyes.
Of course, he does.
There isn't anything within this building that he doesn't know if he wants to.
We just all play ignorant. It's like a conspiracy theory. It's fun. I wouldn't be surprised if he was calling it Eden now too.
Okay, Hermione replied nervously.
Well, I'm going to use the bathroom.
I'll see you later.
Ginny nodded as she returned her attention to the screen. Okay, take your time.
Hermione began following the glow before she paused and stared back at Ginny.
What are you doing?
She asked,
curiosity getting the best of her.
Ginny looked back, smiling. She shrugged. Nothing much.
I was just looking for a birthday gift for Luna, she answered. It's her birthday in a few weeks and Amy and I haven't found her anything yet, so I was just browsing the net. Did I say that all correct, like a normal Muggle would understand?
Actually,
I'm impressed, Hermione replied,
amused.
It actually seems weird coming from you though. Well, see you in a bit, she said as she continued following the ball of yellow light to the bathroom. Hermione was pleased as she exited the bathroom, if you could call it that, as the tub was huge with water jets and everything. It was no wonder Amy and Ginny never wanted to leave. The PJs Amanda gave her were simple white and red checkered cotton trousers and top that fit comfortably on her. It was easy finding the lounge and had to hold in a groan as Amy's PJs were just as bad as Ginny's lack of proper PJs. Amy's consisted of a too small white sleeveless vest not only showing off her toned tummy, but her nipples could easily be seen through the top, it was so tight. Then to top things off, her shorts were so short they could almost be called panty briefs, showing off her long slender legs. Amanda was lying across the same couch as Ginny, curled up and lying across it with her bare feet being absently fondled by Ginny in her lap, as they both chatted about things Luna might like for her birthday, and smaller windows popped up and disappeared next to the larger ones, probably the computer giving her suggestions. Hermione sighed quietly to herself while rolling her eyes. Amanda and Ginny had always been very close and comfortable, touching and hugging whenever and however they wanted. She had always been a bit envious of the kind of caring friendship they had with each other.
Oh, hey Hermione, Amanda said as she looked up with a smile.
I see they fit all right. I wasn't too sure. I know how conservative you can be in your jammy choices, but you always look cutely comfy anyway, she said with a teasing smile.
Yeah, well thanks, Hermione replied, embarrassed and pleased to get a compliment. Come over, Amanda continued. We're just looking for something to get Luna for her birthday, she said, pointing to the comfy-looking chair next to them. You got any ideas? She asked as Hermione took a seat and shook her head. I know, it's so hard when you have a whole planet full of shops in the living room. If only the magical world would get a clue. Anyway, what did the doctor say? Oh, well, they're going to be using a new treatment using some kind of machine, she replied with a smile. They said I'll have to continue treatment for about a year, but it should hopefully regress completely. They say it could be a side effect of Dementor exposure. Damn, that could be true, said Ginny, worried. You went to Azkaban once recently for Dumbledore, didn't you? Hermione nodded. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. They said some people might just be highly susceptible to the things cold. Well, at least you're getting treatment, said Amanda in relief. But what was taking you so long? Oh, well, she began, blushing. I was offered a job by the head of research and development, to work in a department everyone seems to call Wonderland. Both girls chimed out, laughing before Hermione could say more. You should take it, Amanda said giggily. But watch yourself with Cornelia, or she'll have you in her office. I heard about this poor fifth-year girl that got separated from her class field trip a couple days ago, and Cornelia got hold of her in an empty office. Well, let's just say she probably had more fun, as class trips have restricted access. I'm certain Cornelia's access was unrestricted. Hermione blushed brightly. Don't be silly. I'm sure it's just a silly rumor someone thought it funny to start. I see all, hear all, and know all. Are you calling me a liar? Seraph's voice suddenly startled her as it came from all around. No, but she can't go around seducing 15-year-old girls on school trips. Blah, Seraph mumbled. I can prove it if Harry lets me. I still have it on file for blackmail. Yeah, blackmail material. You told us you kept it because it's too hot to delete, Amanda pointed out smugly. Hey, don't grass on me, she whinged. The girl was actually just turned 18 anyway, so perfectly legal. And I have scrubbed the file. But just think of the secrets I have of yours. Both girls paled before Amanda looked smug. You can't tell her, as some are Harry's too. Indeed, but not all of them, only a few, she retorted, giggling. Okay, no grassing you out to Hermione, happy? Ginny complained. Very, she agreed, smug. The British Prime Minister was minding his own business in his office, hoping no one barged in and caught him slacking off, as he had an exhausting day and found himself glad his appointment at CyberTech was cancelled. It had come to his attention by some old man, or should he say, old wizard, that CyberTech was aware of the magical world and supposedly took their savior, Harry Avalon's own sister, from their grasp, and now his technology was proving to be too much for them to handle. In addition, the old man Dumbledore was continually asking who the Cyber Knight was. Well, after the old man gave him the lowdown on the Cyber Knight, he replied that he didn't know, and after laughing Dumbledore out of his office for thinking he would have any say over a company as powerful as CyberTech, he thought on it. His first and foremost thoughts were Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. However, the description was wrong, and he would have been made aware of Iron Man being in the country, as he may have shown up to some code blues they've had recently, as he liked to stick his nose into what was not his business. The Prime Minister was kind of glad for Captain Britain dealing with them, no matter how annoyingly corny and into being a comic book superhero he was. However, this left the Prime Minister looking at CyberTech as his main suspect and sighed. What was it with these rich geniuses and creating battle armor? Though, that boy racer side of him could barely wait to see what the armor looked like. Maybe he should have asked the old fool whether he had a picture. However, before he began to dwell on the stupid war too much that was hidden from them but affected them nonetheless, he heard a soft buzzing sound and quickly opened his right drawer. Pulling out a remote control with a red button, he pushed it. He was startled to see a twin sword pointing down and crossing in the middle, and across a shield. He felt he should recognize that coat. It was on the screen that came out of the wall instead of one of his many advisors, or perhaps the President of the United States. Knock, 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 knock. He heard the door as he stared at the screen when he heard a mechanicalized voice. Open the door and accept the package.
It said no more as the door once more knocked, and the Prime Minister quickly opened the door to see his peer holding a small box wrapped in brown paper and took it with a thanks before returning to his desk and staring at the screen.
"Open it,"
the voice spoke commandingly, and the minister found himself doing just that to find a weird, well, it looked like some kind of mini-futuristic engine from a steampunk genre.
However,
he did take comfort in the CyberTech logo on the device.
"Switch it on," he was commanded once more.
He looked and soon found the on-off switch and flicked it.
It happened instantly as he heard a startled yelp. He turned to see the painting he knew was connected to the magical world show an expression of shock as the man in the painting squirmed before the whole thing sizzled before falling off the wall with a clank to the floor, and breaking.
"It appears, Minister, we are free to talk. I'm afraid that I have no trust for the magical community as a governing faction."
"Me either," he agreed with a sigh of relief as Harry Avalon appeared on his screen sitting back in a comfy-looking leather chair. "What exactly is this thing?" he asked, gesturing to the engine.
"It's a portable distortion field generator. It will keep any magical form of transport from entering number 10 for a while. This one has also been attuned to interfere with some enchantments such as the one on the painting. In most cases it destroys the magic. However, the generator will only last a few more hours before the battery dies, so I shall be installing them to cover Downing Street, and I shall have several of my security forces best protecting non-mage government officials from magical personnel, even if they claim to be a government. As far as I know, the British people have never recognized their governing body, and they seem more incompetent than."
Well, yes.
Very well," the Prime Minister agreed, wondering whether he did something stupid recently, and even though he banned some really weird and racist training in schools and government departments, and the teaching of it in schools and government-funded institutions such as colleges and universities, and though many in the opposition government opposed it, as bigoted and fascist, the people voted him and his party in with such majority that they could actually get things done, and so they did what the people voted them in to do, and were trying to keep all of their promises, which was difficult when a lot of the mainstream was whinging at you constantly. However, he was certain Harry Avalon was on his side there, so quickly shrugged the thought off. "Well, anyway, I would presume this is not all of what you wish to discuss, as you could have delegated this engine, and a briefing on this magical people." "You presume correctly, Prime Minister," Harry Avalon agreed. "This is rather important, and I need for you to fully grasp what we're going to be dealing with from here on out, so I figured you would be much more receptive to me personally, and it couldn't wait. You might want to get comfortable." The Prime Minister nodded as he quickly moved to his personal coffee machine, and Harry waited for him to finish and seat himself behind his desk before the meeting began.
To be continued.